Good evening indeed to everyone who's been waiting. Thanks a lot for your patience. We're back a day early today with Common Ground. We're doing it on a Sunday because unfortunately I'm busy tomorrow night. So you get a double dose because we're going to live stream tonight and we're going to re-stream it tomorrow night. Just in case you guys think you can get away from us, you can't. Councillor Callahan, what's cracking, man?
I'm good, Charlie boy. How are you?
I'm good. I've had a good weekend. We've had a good night last night. A few drinks. Enjoying the Saturday, enjoying the weather. Can't say I enjoyed the company too much, but it was all right.
Do you know what I enjoyed about the company last night? Is I enjoyed people coming up to me in the pub telling me that they want to see me back as leader of the council. It's always nice for
I
the
mean,
ego.
Gavin, you had one person come up to you, one. So when you say people, it was one person.
What time do you get
But it,
there?
it I got what time did I get there? I think I got there about eight, seven, eight, eight.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not denying I was there. Look, I got preferential treatment at the bar because the barman watches the show. So there we are. It's not all bad.
There you go. We should do this live from the spoon, shouldn't we? That should be our
We
now.
should.
We'll do a whole podcast on a Monday night live from the spoons. That would go down well, I think, in Basildon.
Do you think that we'd actually get people wanting to come on, or do you think we'd get heckled?
I think both of those things are true.
Yeah, because we don't actually get heckled, but people. Well, I mean, I've had a row in public, and I think a few people might give us dirty looks from the other side of the room. But um, I think who we got? Who do we meet last night? Tony,
Mr. Leverett, yeah, we
Mr.
did.
Leverett. Yeah, I
I,
hope he's
I think
watching. Hi, Tony.
I'm sure he is. I um
Yeah.
I think the test though is we always say, don't we? Are these things useful, right? So even if you 100% disagree with me or disagree with you, you can't deny that a lot of people are watching this. You know, the numbers don't
Mm.
lie, and the reaction that you get from the public and people coming up to you, not just in pubs, but I've had it in Tesco's, I've had it all over. Hopefully people are learning a little bit more about how and why decisions get taken, which is the whole reason we started doing it in the first place. So
Yeah.
so
The
long
one
as it's
thing
helpful and useful.
I think a lot of people are criticizing me for not giving you a hard enough time. Do you think I'm being soft?
When you say a lot of people, I think what you mean is one person is criticizing you for that.
Honestly, a lot of people want me to be a bit like. Well, actually, Sam posted something tonight. Mayor Journée said, "Well, I'll bring it up actually because it's actually quite funny. I really appreciate this kind of banter actually. So if you look at that, there, he's trying to do a takeoff of Private Eye, which, like I say, is this decent banter.
I mean,
How
that
many?
is very complimentary to you there, Charlie boy. And I've never seen so many empty chairs. That's not right, is it? We wouldn't have empty chairs if we did a live
We wouldn't.
podcast.
We wouldn't. Maybe this is what Sam's podcast would be like if he did one. Who knows?
Yeah. Hmm.
I
The
mean,
comment. I mean,
Sam.
listen. If
I
he's
like
sharing
it.
it, if he's sharing it to his 32,000 followers, I suppose we should say thank you and welcome
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
podcast.
and I'm sure the mayor's watching. So hello, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sure he is.
Because I mean, he's probably smiling right now the fact that we've mentioned him and put this up because it is decent banter. But then he does what he always does, which he shares it to every group, which is not related to the topic at all, and becomes a spam artist. But I
Wonder
don't mind.
why. I
Keep
wonder
doing it.
why.
Well, does what do you think it could be? But jokes aside, we do have some serious conversation tonight regarding um, the housing crisis that we're
Mhm.
in Basildon. There's so much that I could say about what goes on in this town when it comes to housing. Look at our two mugs there. Um, so when I first got involved in local politics, I actually wanted to encourage the council to do more of social housing. It seems like now we're going to be given whatever housing it is basically shoved onto us by the government, by developers, and because we don't have a local plan. There's so much about this that I don't understand, I'll be honest, when it comes to what the council can do, what they can't do, what jurisdiction we have over saying no to the government on some of their direction. I'm hoping tonight that you can give myself and the viewers a bit of insight into how this actually works, because the process, the politics, we can argue it, the process is what's going to kill us here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, there's several parts to it, right? So the first thing to say is that planning is really complicated, right? And it is, and it's deliberately complicated. But the government have had, successive governments over the last 30 years have had something called local development plans. And what that means is there is a process by which you have to go round. And the very first thing that happens is something called a call for sites. So every single person who owns land in the borough is asked if they want to put their site forward to potentially become a place for housing. And that happens, and then they put it forward and they say, we think we might be able to get 50 houses on this bit of land, or 100 houses, or 1,000 houses, whatever it might be. And that goes through a whole process, and it's called a local plan. And then when a council passes a local plan, those call for sites become what's called an allocation. And if that goes through and it passes and it's the adopted local plan, it means that the only homes that can be built anywhere in a borough are in those allocations. So if your bit of land, if your green space does not get put forward to become an allocation in the local plan, you cannot build on that site. And the council has all the power to be able to turn around and say to you, you're not allowed to build on that site, so forget it. Right now, for some
Mm,
landowners, that's devastating, right? Because they've bought the land, they want it to be sold for housing and whatever. Basildon hasn't had a local plan since 1998. That was the last time we had an adopted local plan, right? I was 9 years old the last time that this council passed a local plan. And in the subsequent years, what has happened is we've been asked to produce them. And the government sets out all of these criteria. So they tell you how many houses you're supposed to have, what your it's called an objectively assessed need, an OAN, what the number is that they think you need in terms of house building. And in Basildon, we've had 25 years now, a bit longer than that actually, coming up to 30 years, where we've had what's called speculative development. So, because there is a legal document that the council has to be able to say to a developer and to a landowner, your house, your housing can't be given the green light. You can't have planning permission because you're not an allocation in local plan. The council has been on the back foot. And essentially, everyone who's come forward over the last 20, 30 years and said, well, you haven't got a local plan. So actually, my 50 houses, my 100 houses, I should be allowed to pass that. Even if
mm,
the council says no to it at a planning committee, the planning permission is granted. They get it in appeal, because when it goes to an inspector, which is a kind of a chief planning lawyer who kind of sits like a judge in a courtroom, that planning inspector sits there and goes, well, hang on, Basildon Council, you've been told to pass a local plan. You haven't got a local plan, so you don't have any legal standing here. You've got no reason to reject this, and therefore that housing is going to be built. And where I think this is quite dangerous, and where we've got ourselves into a really bad position now, is everyone kind of gets lost on the numbers, right? So back in 2018, I actually passed the local plan with UKIP, believe it or not, when I was in coalition with those guys. And that was for 16,000 homes back in 2018. And because that plan then got rescinded a couple of months later by the Tories, and we never had one, every year that passes, your need gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And Basildon has got an atrocious. I mean, our house building rate up until the last couple of years was appalling. I mean, we were completing on about 70 houses a year that were being built, when actually the government was saying you need to have 700 houses being completed every year in order to meet your demand. So we just were not building enough houses. We were not getting things done quickly enough and over the line. And now we're in a situation where the government has said, look, Basildon Council, because we had, Reform and the Tories taking to social media saying, we're going to challenge the council, we're going to fight the local plan, we don't accept the numbers. And so basically what the government did was they got in touch with Basildon Council and said, you're due to have a meeting at your full council in September, which is to go to the penultimate hurdle for a local plan. It's called a Regulation 19 consultation. You do that, and then the final vote is on the actual plan. And they turned around and they said, Basildon Council, will you get that through? To which the senior officers at the council had to inform MHCLG the Tories in Reform are against it, so therefore there isn't a majority, and there is no way that this will go forward to Regulation 19. So what the government did is said, well, do you know what? Sod you then. You've had so many chances. We're taking that off you, and we are just going to run the consultation. We're going to go to the planning inspector, and we're going to pass the plan ourselves. And what that means is that the government can make any changes that they want. So if after the Regulation 19 consultation comes back in late 2026, the government could turn around and say, do you know what? You guys were not mad keen on those green spaces, but you know what? We're going to put them in anyway. So those homes can be built. And actually, we think you're being quite conservative on that site. You're saying it can only take 100 homes. Actually, we think you can get 150 homes on there. So we're going to increase the allocation to 150. If that happens, and it is happening now, we're in big trouble as a borough, and the council will have no power to stop that from happening. So I know this is long-winded, but I honestly, Charlie, I find it so bizarre. Like, genuinely, I find it bizarre that the people who are so anti-house building, so anti-development, keep voting for these conservative councillors to represent them. I hope you're listening, Billericay, right? You keep voting for these people, and they're the idiots who are going to end up landing you with double the number of houses in Billericay that you would have got if you'd have passed the bloody local plan 5 years ago when we were set to put it through the council. So it's bad news, and you can't say it hasn't been coming in this borough.
Oh yeah, it definitely has. I mean, when I was around, there was a big uproar within the Conservative group on the council because the local plan during my time was promised to be settled, and every single time it got brought up, it was kicked to this council, then kicked to that council, and kicked to that one, and then before you know it, you've got no teeth in any of these matters at all. So I responded to something that Councillor Barnes posted, which was that he was going to fight the government on these numbers. And I thought to myself, hold on a second, you've got Whitehall making a decision, top brass saying this is going to happen, and they're going to listen to you because why? You know, it to me, if you give the government, and look, we can have a debate about whether or not this is a good government or a bad government. You're going to say it's great. I might disagree on some to some degree.
Excellent.
Um, I knew you'd say that. You know, we can talk about the right wing uniting later. Um, but if the government say you have to do this, there is no point in putting out posts online and making statements in the Echo which nobody reads to say we're going to fight this. So, in your experience, how far can Andy Barnes go with this so-called fight?
He's lost. I said it in the council chamber. They try and portray themselves as gladiators. They've been knocked out in the first round. Like, honestly,
Mm.
it's so pathetic. I sit there and I listen to it, and I get deja vu because it's like ever since I got elected in 2012, I've been sitting there listening to Phil Turner and Tony Headley and Richard Moore and Andrew Baggott standing up saying about how terrible it is that we're being asked to build houses, and they're going to stop it and they're going to fight the government. And listen, good luck to you. I think we said it on this podcast, right? I knew the local plan was important to the Conservative councillors. They make a lot of promises in Billericay that they are, failing miserably to keep, and it's only going to get worse. And I said, if they had wanted to come and speak to me when we were in all of these negotiations around, who was going to run the council and how it was going to be, clearly, contrary to what's on social media this week, I do have the ear of the government, and I do have the ear of a lot of these ministers, and I could have gone into bat and had a conversation to say, look, is there anything we could do? But the Tories never asked that question. They never got in touch with us to say, how are Labour thinking about voting on the local plan? Are there things in there that we could potentially agree on? There was none of that. It was all literally just, we're going to portray ourselves as we're going to fight for it. And it's, again, there was a planning committee last Wednesday. It was so bad. are so bad. The way that Larkin and Janae were behaving in that meeting, like, again, I think sometimes people don't fully understand this, but there's these fancy words in local government, right, that people use, and often they talk about being predetermined, right, and all this sort of stuff. What it means is that in a planning committee and a licensing committee and in an appeals and appointments committee, the councillors that are sat there are in essence a jury. So it's something called quasi judicial. So they are
Hmm.
essentially the 7 or 8 member, I forget how many people are on planning now, but they are a jury. And their job is to go into the room, to listen to the evidence that is put before them, and to come to a decision based on the evidence before them. Now, you will know, and I will know, that most councillors will read the agenda in advance of the meeting and be pretty clear about where they think this may or may not go. But before you get to a planning meeting, a public meeting, there is something called a technical briefing that happens usually the day before. And all of those councillors can come and they can ask their technical questions, they can ask their legal questions to get clarity in their head. So when they get to the actual meeting, they are then able to make considered judgment and give reason, planning
Hmm.
reasons, lawful reasons as to why they are in favor of something or they are against something. What we saw happen on Wednesday last week was a circus, right? And it proves, and this is what I mean about, it's like the quality of your counselor, right? Are these people intelligent, switched on, engaging with the detail? Do they really want to get into it and understand it and articulate for themselves what's going on? Or are they just going to play to the gallery, play to the crowd, do the really easy thing in politics and say, we're fighting for the people and therefore we've got to say no to this and blah, blah, blah. And the worst thing about it is that then the next day you read, or the day after you read in the Echo newspaper, that these guys have gone and they've fought against these housing developments and this, blah, blah, blah. Charlie, I am telling you now, every single house that was rejected for planning permission last Wednesday, every single one of them will get planning permission and will be built. Because every one of those developers is going to
Hmm.
sit there, listen to that debate, listen to the fact that planning reasons were not put forward, that it was a complete circus, that the councillors were turning up. I mean, one of them, old plod Martin Mordecai, sat there reading out a prepared statement that he'd obviously written before he even walked into the room. I mean, you would think a police officer of 40 years might have understood how it all works in a quasi judicial process. Like, he didn't even try and hide the fact that he was predetermined when he walked into the room. I mean, that
Hmm.
is just from a appeals point of view. They just point at that and say they are planning inspector. We
So
didn't
what
get a
is the
fair
point of
hearing.
having these planning committees then? Because if you're saying that with no local plan they've got no teeth, all they're really allowed to do is rubber stamp everything that comes through the door, right?
Right, I'm going to take you back, my friend, to 2021 when there was a certain guy running round this borough telling everyone that Gavin Callaghan was going to build tower blocks for Tower Hamlets and monster tower blocks all over the. I don't know, I can't remember what his name was, but telling everyone that this is what was going to happen. And I kept going on every day saying, you can't stop it. It doesn't matter who you are, you can't stop it. They will put forward their planning application, and you've got a choice then as a councillor. And this is when you say what's the point? This is the point. As a councillor, you got a choice. The homes are going to get built, right? So the planning consent. I mean, the 172 million pound development that is going up at the moment in Basildon Town Centre. The Conservatives said that they were going to stop and that it was never going to happen, right? It's being built now, and all 498 flats are going to be built in exactly the same way that all of those homes that Janae and Larkin said that they were stopping last week are all going to get built, right,
So
on
it,
appeal.
it so it,
But, it,
it
but,
so
it,
it's
but
just rhetoric then.
it's playing to the gallery bollocks, right? But the critical thing about it is this: if you sit in that meeting and you say, do you know what? I don't really want all of these housing. I think the numbers are a bit extreme, but my hands are tied. I've walked into this room and both of my hands are tied behind my back because the full council has got no local plan. We haven't got anything that we can hang it on. We've got no policies within the local plan that we can turn around and say, because of that, we're saying no to this and whatever.
So
You,
let me ask you
but
a
what you
question then,
can
because I've
No, but this is just, let me make this point because this is the critical point. You then have a choice about, in every single planning application that comes forward, you have something called Section 106, which is the money for infrastructure, new schools, new GP surgeries,
Hmm.
roads, all that sort of stuff. If you say in the meeting, we're going to grant you planning permission, you can get all 100% of that infrastructure money off of the developer and in the bank. If it goes to an appeal, you don't get that money. So the infrastructure money, the 106 money that is in there, you then have what the planning inspector, there's a negotiation about it, and it nearly always never ends up being the figure that is in the planning application. So the developer chips away at it and says, actually, we were going to give you 5 million quid for all of that. Now we're only going to give you 2.5. And then what's worse is that you get less infrastructure money, but you also then find that the developer says, oh, and by the way, in order for this appeal to go through, that's just cost me £400,000 in legal expenses. There you go, Basildon taxpayer. You now have to pay my legal bill. So again, that meeting on Wednesday night where they're rejecting all of those applications, you've just cost the taxpayer millions of pounds in lost infrastructure and hundreds of £1,000s in legal costs that are going to fly out the door. And mark my words, I'll make you a prediction here now. If this carries on, if Janae and Larkin continue to do this every other week at every single planning meeting, it will be planning and planning appeals that bankrupts Basildon Council faster than anything else. Temporary accommodation,
So
debt, none of it. It will be this that
yeah,
bankrupts the
so
council.
ultimately, what you're saying is then, like I just basically intimated before you started talking there, is that the planning committees are useless. You can't oppose anything. You have to approve it, or otherwise you get financially penalised for it in the long run. So what is the point of having a planning committee without a local plan?
Well, you have very, very little power. Very little
Mm.
power. So the incentive should be, should it not, get on and pass a local plan. Do it
So why hasn't it
quickly.
been done?
Because of what you've
I
seen.
mean,
Because Phil
yeah, but
Turner and Andy
with
Barnes
all
and
due
Andy
respect,
Bagger.
but hear me out though. They've because of the nature of Basildon Council, for those who are not too familiar, it changes hands very often because we do elections in thirds. So because of that, you don't have ultimate consistency for a long period of time. You have to make deals and work with people that you otherwise would prefer not to, a la your mention of UKIP earlier on in the chat. So if you've been in power as leader of the council 3 times, Andy Baggott has been in charge of the council. Andy Barnes is now in charge of the council. Phil Turner's been in charge of the council. Between the four of you, and forgive me if I've forgotten a leader in there, I don't think I have, but during your time at least, why between the four of you hasn't a local plan been put forward? I mean, what's the hindrance here? Is it just that you're not intelligent enough to get it over the line? Are people just trying to be smart when they're really thick? I mean, you mentioned earlier on that people don't get into the detail, or you question whether or not they're actually interested in the detail. So is this just a problem with aptitude within the elected political sphere of the council, or do you leaders as a collective just not have it in you to get it done?
So in 2015, I was the leader of the opposition group. I think I had 9 councillors or whatever. The council was hung, but I had 9 councillors. Phil Turner, as the leader of the Conservatives, largest party but without a majority, they couldn't get UKIP to agree to a local plan. I voted with the Conservatives in order to progress a local plan. In 2018, I worked with Linda Allport Hodge when she was the leader of UKIP, and we passed the
She loves
local
me.
plan. She used to love me. I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
Um,
she loves me so much.
yeah, I think it's because I kept winning and she didn't. But so then, but we passed the local plan. I give her a due. Loads of graft, loads of hard work. Got it over the line, and it passed in the March of 2018. We lost control of the council, and then the Conservatives came in and said they were scrapping it and getting rid of it. We came back a year later, and again, one of my prerequisites, putting together the administration with David Harrison from the Wickford Independents, with Kerry from the Independent Group. My stipulation was, if we're going to do this together, we have to pass a local plan. And all
Mm,
of us were completely united in saying, yes, we agree, we're doing it. So in that 2 years, 2021, we passed the local plan. Even during COVID, we got it to the final stage where it goes out to the public and then it gets sent off. There's a vote to take it to the inspector. That was the last hurdle. What happened when Andy Baggott took over in 2021? He rescinded the entire thing. So he didn't just say, we're going to make some small changes. He rescinded the entire thing. So in 2022, Michael Gove actually put the Conservative Council, the majority Conservative Council, they had the numbers to make it happen. He put the majority of the Conservative Council into special measures. And so what that meant was that we had a strict timetable and that the council had to meet it. That's what we were doing. We were sticking to that timetable. We were meeting it. So the Regulation 19 consultation is due to go out in September, and then the final plan due to go to the government at the beginning of 2027. All of that is done, and that was the plan. When you say how does it not happen, my group will always vote to get a local plan through. Right, we might not like some parts of it, but we will vote to get it through. What Andy Barnes and Andrew Schrader, and we'll talk about him in a minute, but what those two had come up with as part of their plan that they were seeking to put through was to take all of the housing out of Billericay and they were going to load it up in Basildon. So you said I was building tower blocks. You should have seen the size of the tower blocks that these guys were going to be building, right? 3,500 flats in Basildon town centre was part of their plan. Now, clearly, I would have been saying in a negotiation, we ain't having that. Like Billericay's going to take its fair share. Like Basildon has taken an awful lot of housing. The housing that has been built, with the exception of the Wick, right, in Wickford, most of the big housing estates that have been built over the course of the last 20 years have happened in Langdon, they've happened in Basildon, right? So
mm.
that's the reality of it. Virtually no houses have been built in Billericay, and there's been flats built in Wickford as opposed to new housing estates. So when it's a case of is there the political will to do it, I would say that from myself, from Kerry Smith, we have shown time and time again the will to do it. But these guys, they just won't. And I just think it's so important, Charlie, that the public understand this. And listen, I've seen stuff from Darren Gardner and some of these people on social media, right? They've been councillors 5 minutes. They don't get it. Like that, and I appreciate that because it's complicated stuff. They don't get it, they don't understand it. But you going on social media, making a tit of yourself, telling everybody, I'm going to vote against planning because I'm going to stand up with the residents and I'm going to do this and about time you will listen to and all the rest of it means absolutely nothing in a planning meeting, right? What you
From
are
my
basic.
perspective, when people say that, it's like that people will object to planning, but then they'll say there's not enough houses to live in. So it's always this argument from my perspective that you just don't want it near you. NIMBYism, not in my backyard. And I think it's ridiculous because I know, and you know, we're both parents, right? How difficult it's going to be for our children to be able to afford to move out at some point in their life, right? I know people now in their 40s still living at home with mum and dad. And that's not to be critical, it just is what it is. And when people say we're sticking up for residents, most residents want their kids to get on. Most people want to be able to sell their houses perhaps and move abroad or move to a different part of England or move to a different part of the UK. They don't want to be stuck. And I think the problem with a lack of building is that people are stuck because you can't move out if you live with mum and dad. You can't sell because no one's buying. It's not really a buyer's market at the moment. So what is it that people are actually objecting to? Is it just objection for objection's sake? Because I mean, people say don't build is the same people that say we want to protect the green belt. Look, if there's an empty field, build on it. People need somewhere to live. Do you know what I mean? Like, my attitude is quite pragmatic. Whether or not people agree with that or not, I just think we need them. So build the houses. Stop messing around. Stop arguing the toss because it's funny or cool or I've got to play politics and just oppose everything. Don't do that. Think about things logically. You know, ironically, I mean, some politicians that making these decisions about we don't want no more houses still actually live with their parents.
Do you know what, though, Charlie? That's the thing. I am of the view that we are living in a housing crisis, right?
Mm,
And we might be able to go to some people will say, well, immigration is putting pressure on the housing market and all the rest of it. Well, that's true, but if you took out that percentage of people in our borough, we've still got a housing crisis, right? So there are 10,000 24 to 34-year olds living at home with mum and dad right now in our borough. And I put on things like the first time buyer events when I was the leader to try and help those people to get out. And it was so illuminating listening to the stories of those people. And the reason I did it was because that was me, right? So I was 33. I was engaged to be married to Emma. And we were sat there going, how are we going to afford to buy a house and to do this and to do that and rent or whatever? Well, we were fortunate in that I went and lived with my parents, and Emma came to live with my parents, and my mum and dad had a spare room to be enable us to do that, and we saved every penny. And it was in the middle of COVID, so you couldn't spend money anyway, could you? Right. So
mm,
that was we able to save and save and save and save and save. But like if we hadn't have had that option to go to my parent, we would have not been able to do it, and we'd be in the private rented market now. The right to buy, has worked for a lot of people, but it's also killed the social housing market. So there are
mm,
3,600 people on the council house waiting list right now, but actually, that's the people that are meeting the 7-year rule. So to get a council house in Basildon, you have to have lived in Basildon continuously for 7 years. We've got some people who, just as you've said there, they might have got to 20 in their early 20s. They might have moved away. They might have gone to university, or they might have gone and lived in another part of the world or whatever. They've come home. They're now thinking about starting a family. They want to stay close to their parents and their grandparents, their support network. But because they've not been here continuously for 7 years, they don't quite meet the criteria. So actually, that 3,600, if you started adding in people who've been here 6 years, 5 years, 4 years, you're probably getting closer to 10,000 houses that you actually need for the council house list. The other side of it is that where the cost of living is going up so much, maybe 10 years ago, a £50,000 a year salary would have meant you could comfortably rent in the private rented sector in Basildon. That isn't the case now, right? So you're finding yourself struggling to meet private rent, wanting to get into the council housing because it's cheaper, but there just is no way that you're going to meet the criteria with the limited stock that we have. Now, to be honest with you, right, trying to teach a conservative, supply side economics should be a relatively straightforward thing to do, right? If your demand is up here and your supply is down there, then quite clearly
mm.
you're going to run into expensive problems, right? And that's what we find at the moment where, over the course of the last 10, 15 years, I mentioned earlier that our house building number was about 70 a year when it should have been about 700, even though the permissions were being granted. But from the developer's point of view, if they was to string it out and they was to take longer to build them, then they know that next year that same 3-bedroom house might be worth another £25,000. So
Yeah, of
when you've got
course, because the demand has gone up, hasn't it? And they can say, well, there's not enough to go around. It's like anything rare becomes more valuable. If it's common, it becomes cheaper. And a part of me does think I'm going to put my tin hat on here, that this is a conspiracy by the banks, really. You know, because you have to borrow money to build on the land, and then you string it out. You don't sell the houses in quick enough time. Banks can keep lending out loads and loads more money, and it becomes a complete circle of people being ripped off. I do wonder though, because you mentioned council housing, how that factors into the local plan. I mean, do you have to put in planning applications for the council to build those houses? Do they ever get rejected? And why have so few been built? Because a few years ago, I did an FOI on the council to find out roughly. I think I've had this conversation with you before, but I need to repeat it because it's relevant to this conversation. Where I think it was only about 110 social houses were actually built or taken on by Basildon Council in the space of, I don't know, I think it was like 10 years, something really, really, you wouldn't believe it.
yeah,
And and forgive me, my numbers may be off now because I'm remembering something from a few years ago, but the point is there's just not enough being done, and I think that we need to focus on that side of things to keep the social fabric of the borough intact. Because I think when you fall through the net, I've said this again before, you got nowhere to go, you're struggling, you end up homeless. you struggle to get out of that issue. And when it comes to the local plan, does the social consequence of not having one ever come up in conversation? Does the human element get discussed versus just numbers and plots of land?
Nowhere near enough, Charlie, right?
No.
So the London Borough of Brent do this amazing thing. In every planning committee that they have at the beginning of every single planning application, they put on screen the the number of people on the council house waiting list. They put
Mm,
on there how many people have moved into council housing, how many people are first time buyers that have managed to buy in the last year, so that in the councillors' minds, it's not just the planning application and the whys and wherefores of the individual application, but it's also that human element of we're here to talk about how we're going to get our people into a home and a roof over their head. And I lobbied and lobbied and lobbied the old executive director to say, look, we should be talking much more about that. I was like, I want films, I want all of this to kind of really get across from a comms perspective who these houses are for, and particularly, on my watch, where we had the Basildon First charter, where it was really clear that we were making this about housing Basildon people and putting those protections in place for people. But
mm,
the other side of on all of this, when it comes to housing, is when we think about infrastructure, the only thing that gets talked about is where's all the school places, where's all the GPs, where's this, where's that. And I think one of the big things, I'm going to spend a lot more time talking about this in the next few months to come, is the social infrastructure. So,
mm,
so where's the community centres? Where's the pubs? Where's the local shops? Where's the local cafes for people to be able to go into? None of that gets talked about and spoken about. I think it's the St Luke's development, which technically comes under Chelmsford City Council over in Runwell in Wickford. But in the middle of that development, they've put a coffee shop. I think it's called Heidi's or something in the middle of that development, and it is such a good idea because people, they flock there, they go there. It's a really good place. I used to live on the Wick for 16 years, and in the middle of the Wick, you've got a Tesco Express, a GP surgery, a community centre, a nursery. That was my first job, working in that Tesco
mm,
Express when I was 16 years old. Like,
mm.
it was a really, really, but everybody goes there, and it's like a chance to meet people and see people. None of that gets spoken about. And honestly, when I read this stuff or I listen to these people talking about we're listening to people, that's why we're saying no to the houses. I honestly wish I had the same self-righteous certitude that these people speak with, right? Because who the hell do they think they are? That kid who's living at home with mum and dad right now, who is saving every penny that they get to try and get a deposit, try and get a bank to say to them, we'll give you a 95% mortgage or whatever. The mum and dad who are themselves sitting there going, do you know what? If my 35-year-old daughter and her fella want to have children and I want to see those grandchildren and I don't want to have to be driving to Colchester or Bishop Stortford or to Suffolk to go and see my grandchildren every week, I want them to
Mm,
be round the corner. I want them to be living in Basildon. I'm going to do what I can to help out, and they're taking money out. They're doing all sorts of things. Which, again, I know people that have come to see me this week who are in their late 60s, early 70s, and they're still working because they're trying to
mm,
top up their children's income in order to help them to get a deposit to get them over the line as well. So honestly, like we number one, I reject the notion from the Conservatives and Reform that the number of homes that we're targeted with building 28,000 is wrong. It isn't. That is the right number, and we should get on and build them. Number two, if you pass a local plan, and this again is interesting about infrastructure, if you don't have a local plan, every planning application that comes forward, the infrastructure money gets ring fenced. So an example there, if you are thinking about Basildon Town Centre, if a planning application goes through there, the infrastructure has to be ring fenced around Basildon Town Centre. If you have a
mm,
local plan, you have something called a SIL, a community infrastructure levy. And that means that you can take that money, put it into a pot, and spend it anywhere you like around the borough. So for that is a really important point because obviously not everyone who's a kid living in Basildon goes to school in Basildon. So actually, there might be schools in Billericay and Wickford that need to expand, and they need
Mm,
more places, but they need to be able to access that infrastructure money from a housing development in Pitsea or Bowers Gifford or whatever it might be. So we have tied our hands. We're losing so much flexibility. And again, my fear is having lost control of our local plan, watching that planning committee on Wednesday, the performative nonsense. And I'll just put this on the record as well. Mike Baker is one of the best councillors in Basildon, right? He is so diligent. Like, you will not get one over on Mike Baker when it comes to detail. Like, this is a guy who cover to cover reads those agendas, understands it, and is genuinely brilliant. And the thing you always know about a councillor is whether they're good is whether officers talk to you about them. And all of the officers
mm,
will say to me, bloody hell, we've got to be on our game when we're going up against Mike Baker because he's really good and he gets it and he works hard. The treatment that he got in that meeting on Wednesday, the being ridiculed, being, the cabinet member for education attacking somebody for being a school teacher, like, honestly, it was so alarming. And my fear now is that what's going to happen is that MHCLG, who are watching us because we're all getting, the intervention and all the rest of it, that they very quickly just turn around and say, do you know what, Basildon, we're taking all your planning powers off you. So they've done it over in Epping Forest, which basically means that every single planning application no longer even bothers going to a committee. So residents can't even turn up to a committee and come and have their say. It just goes straight off to the government and the government says yes. So, and at that point, let me tell you, every developer, every landowner in the borough, they all just chuck planning applications in and they
yeah,
all
I'm
just
sure.
say,
Yeah,
we,
why
we,
not?
we want it, we want it, we want it. And you know what? They get it. So though, every time, I just say to the public who are watching this, every time you see on social media any Tory or Reform councillor going on about the planning numbers, about the local plan, about fighting this, stopping that, voting against this, just understand, perversely, the opposite is going to happen. They are going to
Hmm.
cost you dearly.
Yeah. So, do you think that perhaps the reason why you mentioned the ridicule, and I think we should talk about the culture of politics and councillor behaviour moving away from housing just for a
Yeah.
moment, because it seems to me as though there's too much personal animosity involved in Basildon Council. I mean, I posted a video about this, which I think people are fed up of it. Like they don't
Mhm.
want to keep seeing the he said she said stuff. And I have to be honest, I find it really really boring. But the language that councillors use, the way that I suppose in a way, if you're attacked, you want to defend yourself, right? And that works both ways. If you can have a dig, they're gonna have a dig. If they're gonna have a dig at you, you want to have a dig back. And then it becomes this complete farce of a council where it's calling each other names, lying about each other. And I want to just touch on it because you mentioned Andrew Schrader, and there's something that he mentioned about you where he called you a cancer to local politics, and this was in comparison between you and the mayor. I just want to put this on the screen for people to read it so people can make their own minds up about what this actually means. And I don't mind reading it out if you'll bear with me for a moment. I believe that Gavin Callaghan is worse than 1,000 journées. Journées is bombastic and vainglorious, to be sure, but his conduct is nothing compared to Callaghan, not even close. Callaghan is a cancer, an unscrupulous, unprincipled liar who believes in nothing and is devoted only to the worship of his own bottomless ego. I don't condone how Janae conducts himself. He's one of the reasons it will be a freezing cold day in Hades before anyone ever catches me dead in a turquoise rosette. I don't like his populist style of politics any more than he likes my traditional one nation Toryism. Well, that's not traditional for the Tories, just FYI. And I don't accept that his braggadocio bears any comparison to Callahan's narcissistic vindictiveness. How much of that do you take as a fair criticism? How much of that would you say is a complete lie? And feel free to respond to him.
Uh, so look, very. I have a very high threshold for what I deem to be unacceptable behaviour. Right? If I
Mm,
if I was to respond to everything that is said about me, I wouldn't do anything other than make complaints. I did report Schrader to the standards committee this week over that because and it's important to know Andrew Schrader has got form. So 2 years ago on his little blog, he was writing that I was akin to being a murderer of old people, and now he's calling me a cancer, which I think is just the most vile language. Listen, I don't think I have ever had a conversation with Andrew Schrader. Every time I'm in a committee or in a room with Andrew Schrader, he hides away and melts and doesn't talk to me. He's very, very good on his keyboard at sending a load of very aggressive, very bullish comments about me. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with him. And listen, I've got issues with Andrew Schrader, right? I've got issues with the fact that he is the cabinet member for the local plan, that his family have pocketed £5.65 million off of an allocation in the local plan, and that I think that that will cost the council when it comes to a perceived conflict of interest. I have
Mm,
raised this continuously. Now, I don't care if his family have pocketed that money. I don't care if it's done in the right way. I care if it's going to then start costing Basildon Council taxpayers money because of a perceived conflict of interest that will lead to us losing appeals and all the rest of it. But that's another story. On this, I think there's several parts to it, right? I don't think I have ever used language like this about another councillor. I've said that councillors, their behaviour is vile, their behaviour is disgusting. I've said that kind of stuff. I think that the behaviour towards Mike Baker on Wednesday was vile and disgusting and crossed the line. I have not ever used language about somebody being cancelled, that dehumanizing language that you're seeing there. And it is all just designed to turn people on me. Now, Charlie, you and I have known each other for the best part of a decade, right? I think a lot of people can level an awful lot of criticisms at me, which are fair. But the idea that I believe in nothing, right?
mm,
I think that's complete and utter bollocks, right? I have been the person in my first ever leaflet back in 2012 that said I'm going to fight to get Basildon out of Essex County Council, right? I have believed the two-tier system was wrong, and I have been the leader, the only leader for 52 years that's got us to the point where it is now likely to be a reality. I believe in council housing. I believe in building homes for first-time buyers. My voting record will prove that every single time. I believe that this borough of ours can be better than it is. I believe in regeneration, a culture-led regeneration of Basildon Town Centre. So there's a whole host of things there. What this is, right? And I don't think this gets the kind of the attention that sometimes it might. You will probably know more about this than I will, having been sat in that room. But the actual visceral hatred that those conservative councillors have for me personally, simply because I have delivered policies that they continuously said were impossible to deliver. So let's
mm,
not forget, Andrew Schrader told everybody it was impossible to have weekly black bin collections. I did it. I brought it back within a year. He said it was impossible for the streetlights to be turned on. I did it twice. He said it was impossible to attract private sector investment into Basildon Town Centre. I got the best part of £1.5 billion on the table for Basildon Town Centre. What these guys can never do, and you see it with Genet and as well as the Tories, they can't beat me up on policy. They
mm,
couldn't sit here and have a conversation or an argument with me about policy, about housing, about enforcement, about community safety. They can't do it. So they resort to this in order to kind of, through osmosis, get it out on social media that I am this vile bully, I'm this, that, and all the rest of it. And I keep the receipts. I keep all the receipts. So every
What
time,
would
I
you
mean,
say to people that say that they've got receipts on you? Because when I was talking about behaviour, I'm also referring to you. And I think that there are some things that you have said and done, which could be in the same vein as this. You could be criticised in the same vein as the people might say, "Oh, he's called you a cancer. So what? Gavin's said worse. Gavin's done worse. Gavin's portrayed himself in
I'd say
such and such a
point it
way."
to me. I'd say point to me
Well,
where I've used dehumanizing language like that. about another councillor from any political
Well,
party at any
from
point
my
over the last
perspective, I
15
don't.
years.
Yeah, from my perspective, I'm not sure that I would consider the word or calling somebody a cancer to be dehumanizing. I just think he means that your politics is not for him.
No, I don't. I think what he's referring to there is that my mere presence in that council is a cancer that he thinks needs to be cut out. And you
So
know,
that could be metaphorical then. Could be just a metaphorical way of
but listen,
saying that
I
he
think
doesn't want you around, which is obvious. I mean, why would the Tories want you around? I mean, you're a pain in the ass.
I would say I'm an effective politician. So,
No,
but my
I'm saying from their perspective, you are a pain in the ass. That's what I'm saying. They're looking at you thinking, well, he's a roadblock. And the reason why I say that is
it's
because
not my job, is
in
it,
all
to be nice and to help these people get along? It's my job
well, no,
to when I'm in
you
opposition to
you could be
challenge them.
nice.
But it's my job to challenge them, and it's my
I
job.
know.
And listen, as I've said, Charlie, I don't think I've ever had a conversation with Andrew Schrader. I've never sat across a table and had a conversation with the kid in 15 years. And don't forget as well. There's a lot of officers who also keep receipts on some of these people and some of this behaviour. And look, every counsellor will tell you that you can do things or say things or whatever that in the cold light of day you might sit there and think, why did I say that? Like, what have I done that for? Like, you can't go 15 years in frontline politics without making the odd mistake, right? And I get that. I think Winston Churchill once said, a lie is halfway around the world before the truth has got time to put its trousers on. And that's part of the problem where we're living in this social media age, whereby somebody can go online and they can say something, it can run around the place, and it can cause merry hell when it isn't remotely true. And
Hmm.
you'll come back and you'll say to me, here's an example of where you've done that, or whatever. I've
I'm
never
about
used
to.
I've never used dehumanizing language of calling somebody a cancer.
Okay. So he's called you a cancer. I mean, look,
All
I'll
right,
give you
tell me,
just a
tell me
little
this,
bit
tell me
of.
this. Do you think that is an acceptable way for somebody? And put it in context, right? Andrew Schrader is a protected species, right? In Billericay, he is a protected species, even though there's 5.65 million quid in his family's coffers over the local plan. He tells everybody he's against housing and against the local plan, but his family's done all right out of the local plan. He's constantly going out as if he's like the counsellor from
What
Jacob Rees-Mogg's love child.
are you
What do
making an
you think that
accusation though?
this is? That did you? Am I what?
Are you making an accusation?
Of what?
You're saying that he's on the local plan saying, oh sorry, he's on the planning committee saying he doesn't want to build anything, but his family's making 5.65 million pounds off of selling land. I mean,
I'm saying he's a hypocrite. I'm saying he's,
okay.
he's he's an absolute hypocrite. And this thing about how I don't believe in anything and I've got a bottomless ego. He's a complete hypocrite because his family have pocketed 5.65 million out of the local plan, but he's telling everyone it's a disastrous plan. He's totally against it and all the rest of it. And people believe in it. But my point, Charlie, is this: do you think, given the way he portrays himself, given the way he tries to come across, do you think that the way he's talking here, bearing in mind that you know him as well, you know he's a weasel that would never actually have a conversation in face to face with somebody like this. What do you think of
Hmm.
this kind of comment?
Personally, I think that he's got a way of writing things, and he always has done. He likes to write in, this kind of like quasi Shakespearean garble. But I look, I'm a free speech guy, so I just don't see what the biggest issue here is, other than the culture. Like there is a culture of discontent amongst the councillors in Basildon Council, and contempt even for each other, which to me is, it must be difficult to be a councillor on all sides, having to go into a chamber where you know that you can make a well-intentioned speech, and then at the end of it, you're going to see a Facebook post from everyone from every different party saying that he's corrupt, he's doing something wrong, he behaved badly, he had a go at a woman, he had a go at someone else, he chased someone out of a council meeting. I've heard it all in the last 12 months, and I've never seen anything quite like it. And I think that there is this culture of, I've got to get a dig in first. And I think this is Schrader's way of getting a dig in first. But I want to move on to other digs now because you've had a dig this week at Sam Genet based on a rumor. I'm going to put the graphic on the screen there for people to see. That's your post on Facebook saying that rumors are going around that Sam has been sacked as the Essex County Council cabinet member for education and special needs. Right? I think that whilst I understand where the rumor started, and whilst I understand that there was conversation, from what I've heard, again, this is all hearsay, that Sam was going to be replaced with another Sam, Sam Gascoigne, who is actually a teacher, which makes sense to me. It's quite logical to have a teacher in charge of education at Essex County Council. But could you say, whilst you're not calling Sam Genet cancer, pretty fair to say you've said things about him which aren't nice. He's said things about you which aren't nice. And then this comes out, rumours that he's been sacked, and he's done his bit by saying that you're not allowed near Andy Burnham's number 10 that don't want you because you're a problem for them. And I will put that graphic up in a moment too. So the culture is what I'm getting at. I don't care about what you guys say about each other necessarily. You could call each other, every name under the sun, because I don't think that's so much of a negative. Because I like the fact that people can argue and debate. There you can have a standard, but if the standards are slipping, then who brings it up?
So I'm not sure what the question is, but
Who brings up the standards? Like, there is a standard that's being dropped. You're complaining about the fact that you've been called a cancer. You're saying that people are quick off the mark to call each other things and get things out there, and a lie spreads quicker than a single truth, which it does. How do you change that culture? Because you're a part of that.
Well, look, I would say several things, Charlie, about this. Number one is I don't think ECC have actually denied the rumor. Actually, there was a photo, but I'm not sure when that photo was taken. That was put out on Sam's page, but not by the leader or the deputy leader of Reform in Essex. I heard that from three very reliable sources, none of which were in my political party. So that was three very reliable sources who all said the same thing about Mr. Gascoigne, which again, as you say, made sense given his background as a teacher. So we still wait to see what has gone on in relation to that, or whether or not there are moves to make changes at Essex County Council. I think a lot will depend actually on what happens with Farage as to whether or not they carry on as they are, or whether they're going to start making some changes. I know there's been a lot of big changes within Reform HQ over the course of the last couple of weeks. Jamie McIver, who's a county councillor up in Epping Forest, has been sacked from his job as head of local government. So there are some big changes going on at Reform HQ. So look, we'll wait to see what happens there. But clearly, we've got a big issue in Basildon with SEND. We've got hundreds of families who get in touch with me about SEND issues. I've had a number of meetings this week with families of SEND children, and they want us to hold the cabinet member to account, which is exactly what we did. I never said he had been sacked, and you can see very clearly on the screen that I never said that he had. So it's important, I think, to always stick to facts, and so that's what we did in this post. In terms of who's going to bring the standard up, look, I think there's the public will do that because they'll do that through the ballot box, and they'll make it abundantly clear at the ballot box because ultimately they are the arbiters of who they want to govern them, so they will make that clear at the ballot box. And I also think what we saw from Sam this week was just another pattern of just deeply unhinged behaviour. I think last night, as an example, you and I were sat in a pub, and there was posts going out about how I've been a danger to women and girls for the last 10 years, inferring all sorts of stuff. Apparently, Andy was due to offer me a job, but I'm not allowed near Downing Street or number 10 North, which was quite funny because I think the day that came out, I was actually in number 10 with the senior special advisor to the Prime Minister. But nonetheless, and then Mike Baker's going to replace me, which they wouldn't like that. If they don't like me, they wouldn't like Mike Baker replacing me because he would be coming at them with all sorts of detail that they wouldn't be able to to cope with. So what this comes back to, Charlie, and I think I will go blue in the face on this podcast if I just keep saying it. They haven't got any policies to talk about, right?
Hmm.
So the first 100 days of this administration, what have they done? Right. So they've spent £200,000 on hiring political PAs to come in and work for them. Is that a good use of money? They cut the crunches. They took money off of charities and good causes, and they've got intervention on the local plan because they couldn't get that through. If they want to
It
debate,
could be argued that you couldn't get it through.
no, but I did because I stuck to when I took it over. It wasn't at this stage that it's at now. So I did the Regulation 18 consultation where we had 22,000 comments or whatever it was back to it. I then worked through all of that, got the Regulation 19 ready to go. We would have had it out in April, but obviously with the elections they were off and then they were on, so the timetable got changed and it got moved back to September. But that was a government deadline. That was the government's program. Because the council was in intervention by Michael Gove, we had to follow strictly the timetable that they had set. But my point is, because reform councillors cannot talk to you about policy, because you never see anything. I had this debate. Somebody came to see me this week who is a big reform supporter, right? Big reform supporter. And I challenged him back and I said, look, when you look on my Facebook page, right, you don't just see attacks on conservatives or attacks on reform. You don't. You see a whole range of stuff on mine about, last week I posted all the links to the men's mental health charities that are supporting people around the borough. I posted stuff about the green flag status that we got at Northlands Park. I post regular things about casework and things going on in and around the borough. I said this was like what happened to the BBC back in 2016 when they were producing Newsnight. And they went out and they said, can we get Brexit economists to come on and tell us that it's a good thing? And can we get someone to come on and say it's a bad thing? And they could get 50 economists to come on and say it's a bad thing and one to say it was a good thing. And then they presented it as, well, it's 1 and 1. And actually, that wasn't the case at all. And the danger here is that what people end up doing is saying, oh, well, you're all as bad as each other and blah, 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 blah. But actually, I look at the engagement I get on social media for all of the posts that I put out. I mean, I probably put out 3 or 4 posts a day. The overwhelming majority are about what we're doing in Basildon. That isn't the case on Sam or Andy Barnes's pages. They are putting out sensationalized crap because they haven't got any policies. Think back, Charlie, to a year ago when I was saying to you, we're about to launch the consultation to go out on buying the Eastgate shopping centre, or we were about to go and get the bus station or whatever it was that we were doing over there, or we were talking to Sanctuary about what they were doing at Langdon and in the shopping centre. All those things, like every day, it was like bang, 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 bang. This is what we're doing. I don't get any of that now. I mean, like even Basildon Council's comms, they've come out with some daft frigging campaign this week about Love Baz. And it's like trying to emulate New York City. Honestly, it's the kind of crap that the comms team would have brought to me, and I would have said, just leave the office and just bin that and never ever come back ever again.
Yeah, I saw the logo and thought it looked like a dating app.
Honestly, it's so bad. It is so bad, and it's like, and what's the governance around that campaign? By the way, like it's utter rubbish. But that is because they're trying to fill a vacuum, because my comms team were not short of things to do. Right? They were not short of me saying, this week I want to go hard on this. Next week I'm going on that. Then we're going on this. There was a grid of this is where we're going to go. This is what we're going to do. And I communicated that. Because there's nothing happening in that council and there are no real policies coming forward, they're having to come out with this nonsense about tell everyone why you love Baz. Like, we want to find the lovers. Like, who the fuck is writing this stuff? Like, honestly,
it's crazy. Yeah,
it's so bad.
It's like go and speak to somebody. No one speaks like this around here. It's just odd to see something like that.
Even right, from working in comms as well. Who in the kind of hard to reach communities is responding to a Basildon Council Facebook advert saying, "Tell us if you love Basildon"? Like, you're just going to get like, honestly, it's going to be such a small demographic of people that are going to see that and respond to it. It's just not going to be represent. Like honestly, it's so bad. But that's just my pet peeve on, on this stuff. But yeah,
I hear you. Before we go on to the national story that came out today about Rupert Lowe offering an olive branch to Nigel Farage and Reform UK, should we go through some comments? Should we bring some
go on.
comments up on the screen and see what?
Let's
I've not
see
really been paying too much attention here, but
see how
there's a
much love
few
we're
here
getting.
we should. Yeah, okay, let's have a look. Right. Are we getting love? That's the thing. I hope so. I need it. I need my my ego massaged a little bit. Right, this is from Sydney Perrin. I see Larkin has gone back to being a conservative lackey. I'm not sure what that is referring to exactly, but I take it you're not a fan, Sydney. Right. Someone's talking about me a little bit, but it's not relevant to the show. Uh, can you see this one, Gavin? I don't believe Gavin is anything like that. If it wasn't for him pushing for the Weatherspoons in town getting built, I wouldn't have a job right now.
Do you
There
know
you
what,
go.
Lee? I make you right, and I think it was your nan's 80th or 90th birthday that I saw going on in the Spoons the other day. So many happy returns to her. It was actually a year ago today. It came up on my Facebook memories. It was a year ago today, the 2nd of August, that I actually posted a picture. I'd met with the guys and girls who were running the Weatherspoons, and it was all the hoarding was up outside, and inside it was gutted. It was a complete mess. I think they had like a team in from South Wales, these lads who were coming in to build it all out and kit it all out inside. And they were telling us that, their plan was to open in November, and me thinking, oh, that is going to be tight given what this looked like. But a year later, I mean, that pub is going from strength to strength. And do you know the other thing, just as a little kind of token point, I think is really great. Can anyone get parked in car park 2 of an evening at the moment? Right? Because the town is absolutely buzzing every night. Like I met Adele Brown in town on Thursday night, and we spent 15 minutes driving around trying to find a car parking space in there because everyone's going to the cinema to all hours. The Nando's is full. The Orletto Lounge is doing really well. People are in the Spoons. They were at the other restaurants in the town. So it just proves that, build it and they will come. So again,
Mm,
I know that the council did do one good thing in their comms team this week, which you commented on, Charlie Boy. They actually put a video out praising all
they
the
did.
things that I mean, they never mentioned me by name, but all of
No.
the amazing things that I did as the leader of the council to regenerate that town. And they said that step by step we're going on. Although, do you not think this is weird as well? I know I'm getting all my pet peeves out today. Do you not think this
Do
is
it.
weird that even in light of the conversation we've had about the local plan and about all this sort of stuff, that the phrase that the Tories have chosen to go on is that they are building a better Basildon with a logo that's about bricks. And you're like, but you fucking vote against everything that comes forward. That's about
Yeah,
building in
yeah,
Basildon.
yeah.
Like you're against the fucking arena, you're against all of this
Mm,
stuff, and yet your
mm.
whole logo is about building a better. Like it couldn't be more contradictory if it tried, but
Yeah, yeah.
people that don't get comms, I suppose.
Let's move on to another comment. Callahan is no pussycat either. If you dish it out, you have to take it. Plus, they're just words. Not nice words, but for certain, they're words. I've misread that slightly, but you get the point. I agree with Jono actually on this one. I think it is, it is just words. Even though I think you guys could be nicer to each other, I
But
do think.
do you not think it escalates? So, and what I mean
Yeah,
by that
sure,
is,
yeah.
I'm sitting in a pub on whenever it was this week, and some geezer's there taking photos of me. That is then
Mm,
being posted all over social media on a Saturday night.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And he's the same guy who's been taking photos of female counsellors getting in and out of their cars. Like, there does come a point where this kind of dehumanizing language towards certain people does put targets on their back. I'm no pussycat, right? I can handle myself in politics. I can handle myself in a council chamber, but I would be a liar if I said that there hasn't been times in the last 6, 7 months where I haven't been walking around, not just in the town, but elsewhere, thinking to myself, I might be in trouble here. I need to.
yeah.
I don't go out with my kids as an example, so I wouldn't take my kids anywhere in Basildon Town Centre or anywhere in the Basildon Borough for that matter. I wouldn't do it just in case something happened to me. But there's definitely a thing now where, like, to me, it's just weird that Gary Probert or Gary Dastra, whatever his name is sat in a pub taking a picture of me, sending it to Janae, and then putting it all over social media on a Saturday night. Like, that's just odd behavior. And it comes from this sort of, in your words, kind of not nice words on social media. It escalates because people start to believe it and form opinions of you that are
Yeah,
not
I mean,
necessarily based on
I
fact.
read the comments on Sam's post, and it's like people just blindly agree, and I think that when like it's like I said before, any accusations made against a man involving a woman, a child, or an animal, it never leaves him. And I think that, all right, I am a free speech guy, and I think people should be able to say what they want, and you should be able to return the favour in defence of yourself. And I suppose that on this one, I might have to agree that insinuating something like this without evidence is it's harsh. It's harsh, but you've done the same with Sam.
No, I haven't. I haven't done that. I would not equivocate at all. I've never once said that Sam is. I've said that if you are going to be around vulnerable people, you should have a DBS check, and I think it is wrong that any counsellor, and Sam was all over social media telling people that he would not submit a DBS check, and that is wrong. But I have never suggested that he has been abusive towards children in the way that he did about me
No, but you
last night.
you you have said that there's fear in the council of
There
him.
is fear in the council. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the thing, Charlie, with the MHCLG review is that there will be multiple council officers as well as councillors that will be submitting evidence against Sam. I do just remind the public that there has only ever been one councillor arrested for harassing women in Basildon's history, and it wasn't me. It was a certain Mr. Genet. And the last thing I would say, just to be really clear, because this guy doesn't have a voice for himself, but the political advisor, as he called him in that post, was not fired from Basildon Council for inappropriate comments to or behaviour towards women. Right, that didn't happen. That's a complete and utter lie. I don't know where Genet is getting this information from, or who in the HR department at Basildon Council, or the legal department at Basildon Council, who is leaking this stuff to Sam Genet. But they are wrong. It is defamation. And that individual, by the way, who has had a very long and distinguished career in politics, working for very, very senior politicians, and has got some very influential friends in high places. Hence why we hired him, because he came to the council and did an amazing job for us on pride of place funding, on LGR, and on all sorts of other things. I'd be really careful if I was you about going after somebody like that in public in that way, because there will be some of this country's biggest and best lawyers who will not blink twice about doing some free work for that individual in order to bring a certain person down as well. So, he can put on here about belly rubbing on a different level and all the rest of it. He ain't got the minerals to come on and debate policy. He hasn't got the
Mm.
minerals to he wants to go on social media, shout and scream in an echo chamber, and he wants to try and destroy people's lives. And he's going to get his comeuppance, and it's going to be at the ballot box, and it's going to be in an MHCLG investigation, and it will eventually end up on the desk of Reform HQ, and they are going to be asked very serious questions about whether or not they are going to keep the whip or whether or not they're going to suspend it. And now that Mr. McIver is not there to cover for him anymore, I suspect that they might decide to go in a different direction further down the line. So keep doing it if you want, but it won't end well.
Mm. I mean, he was invited on the show many times. It seems like he's got an obsession. I mean, we have to say thank you again for promoting the show, Sam, on all the
Absolutely,
different
yeah.
groups and pages you posted about it
Cha-ching.
on. But
Cha-ching.
so yeah, appreciate that. But I do wonder why you won't come on. And I think there was
What?
another comment here where well, this is something that he did send over. Uh, Charlie would be a far more credible host if he held Callahan to account. Now, I get bored of this because I think that you can be friends with somebody and still ask relevant questions. I don't think, and I'm happy to be told that I'm wrong, but I do not think that I let you get away with anything.
No, but also, I think why is it in Sam's head that the whole thing has to be adversarial? So,
Mm,
and what I mean by that is, I come back to what I said at the very beginning of this podcast, where I was talking about hopefully this is helpful. So, again, what's interesting about that photograph being taken of me in the pub the other day, right, is that the people who were taking that photo were all reform activists. And
Mm,
because the other night, last night, he also came over to you, one of those reform activists. And they all say the same thing, which is they can't stand Sam, that they think the way he conducts his politics and what he's doing is completely wrong, but that they actually really like this podcast and that they sit out in their gardens till 11 o'clock at night watching the podcast because it's quite helpful and informative and they're learning stuff. So it doesn't
yeah.
have to be all about we've got to try and tear Callaghan down, all the rest of it. It's not my fucking local plan. I'm not in charge of the
Mm.
council anymore, right?
But I think
All
I
I'm
think people don't understand the purpose of this program. It's like I'm on the right wing of politics, you're on the left wing of politics. That is where we come together. But also, we are friends. It does not mean, though, in the context of this show, that I'm not going to ask you pressing questions because I will. I've done it. We've done it many weeks over. Some people say I was a bit soft on you the first time round. All right, I'll take that on the chin. You guys can pick which chin. But the point is that every week I'm asking questions that I think the public want answering in a way which isn't pageantry and ceremonial in the council chamber where we've got to hear ye, come all ye faithful and sing the national anthem to a geezer who likes to wear the mayoral robes at every opportunity. Again, fashion choices are each to their own. But at the end of the day, like you have been invited on here, Sam. People actually want you to come on. How many comments have you had saying just come on the show and stop being a bottle job?
But what
And
what what did that reform activist say to you last night in the pub? Sam ain't
he'd never
never
come
gonna
on.
do it. He ain't
He's
never
never going
gonna
to do
do
it.
it.
No, he's
Because
never
on
going to do
here,
it.
like, listen, the other side of it, right? And again, to Jono and to Sam and others, when you're like most political interviews you do, right, are no more than 5 minutes, where you get
Mm,
15-second answers and then you're cut off by the journalist or whatever it might be. It's quite a grilling process to be sat here for 2 hours. I don't know what questions you're going to ask me. I don't know what you're going to bring up on the screen. I'm not in control of any of that stuff, right?
mm,
So from that point of view, to spend 2 hours trying, and again, all I'm trying to do is answer questions as I see it. And yes, I am a Labour politician, and I have been since 2012 in this town, and I have a certain view of it. You can disagree, lads, right? You can
mm,
you can sit here and you can say, I don't agree with that. I think that actually we will be able to stop the local plan. We will be able to reduce the housing benefit and the housing numbers, sorry. And the way we're going to do it is A, B, and C. But you can't say, you've never said that and you can't say it. So all you sit there
mm.
and do is go, oh, Callahan, you're fluffing him up, or it's all biased, it's all nonsense, the rest of it. Come on and fucking tell us what you
Yeah,
do then.
yeah.
Get
And
get
just
a
for
grip,
complete
lads.
transparency, the only thing me and Gavin talk about before the show are the subjects. It's the only thing we organise is the subjects and which order the subjects are going to flow in. Now, when I present things to you, this is hand on heart, me being honest, right? Hands up to everyone watching. We don't discuss anything other than that. And, not that we have to go that far because I think our word should be enough, but I'm very happy to show people our conversations with regards to how we plan the show if they really think this is a stitch up. It's not a stitch up. It just happens to be the case that sometimes I agree with things that Gavin says. Sometimes I don't. During this conversation tonight, I've actually questioned him quite a bit on his own conduct. Now, I can't spend 2 hours telling Gavin he's a liar like you guys will in the Facebook comments. I just have to ask the questions. Gavin gives his answers. And if you guys don't like it, that's fine. But the questions have been asked because I read the comments and I think, okay, well, there's something here. And Gavin's a politician. He's been a politician for a very long time. He understands why you want the answers. So instead of saying that this next comment here that the show isn't credible, well, you got a three-time council leader who's had the ear of the past few prime ministers and Labour leaders nationally. I've worked for a former prime minister, worked for the guy who may become the next prime minister, worked for Home Office. Yeah, I know. I know. I saw that raised eyebrow. Um, right? I've got connections at the top of all the major political parties. Not so much Labour because why would I? I suppose I could use Gavin to get to the top of that tree, but I don't think he'll do me
None of them
that
talk to me
service
apparently
anytime
now.
soon. Yeah, can't get to number 10. But the thing is that to say that we're not credible when, you've been around for a year and a half and all you're known for is
Honestly,
Facebook
Charlie,
shouting.
like
It's crazy to me. It's
it's,
like with me and Gavin, not to blow our own trumpets, but we're working at the very top here. We might live in Basildon, and there's nothing wrong with living here. This is a great town to be in, right? But this is where we are, right? Mr. Mayor, you're here. Like I'm being generous by leaving my hands on the screen. I got to be honest. I'm not. I can't paint it any way differently because the geezer has made the best out of the situation, and credit to him. I do give him a lot of respect and credit for coming in out of nowhere, giving it the big un, and making 100 grand a year doing fuck all. Great. Give me the
I,
100 grand. I'll do fuck all too. Trust me, I'll
but
take it. But to
that,
say
that
we're not credible is crazy.
and
Crazy.
there's also there's an element, isn't there, where a donkey in a turquoise rosette could have won last May. Do you know what I mean? Like Keir Starmer was that hated,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was no opposition from the Tories. Kind of didn't matter who you were gonna get over the line, right? And that's fair enough, but it comes back to that thing. I see it, and I said it in the AGM in my speech about it won't happen now. It will happen in a few months' time or whatever. But there will come an epiphany. It will happen with these reform councillors, because I sit there and I listen to some of this stuff that Sam goes on about, and you're absolutely right. Like a year ago, Sam was selling secondhand jewelry in the Eastgate Shopping Centre, was not part of a political party, had never stood for election before, probably had never voted in an election before, and had probably never read anything to do with a council agenda or anything like that. I started when I was 23, when I was young and good looking, right? Now I'm fucking old and grey, and I'm still here in Basildon Council, right? Reading
I thought you
agendas
were gonna
every
say
week.
I'm still good looking.
I'll leave that to our public. But my point, but my point is like, I've been doing this a long time, so I know, for example, that the road that these reformers are going down on the local plan is a road to failure and disaster. They are going to
Yeah.
find that out, right? I know for a fact that when they're sitting there going on about, there was a really interesting clip, and it did the rounds, where Kerry Smith was shouting in a meeting about Terry Sargent closing the hot meal services down for the elderly in our activity centres. And Sam Janae saying, "No, she never. Where's your evidence?" It's like, mate, like,
Mm,
where
yeah.
were you? Like, she can't step foot in an activity centre in this place because of what she did to him. Like, honestly, so much of that crap that goes on. And this point here from Lee, I think, is interesting as well, because in those council meetings, right, forget the freaking circus they've been in the last few months with all the shouting and the screaming, right? They're so rigid and boring and dull, which is why we were trying to liven them up with the streaming so people could follow it and understand it and know what was being said and all that kind of stuff. But like, councils are dull, right? I can say this because I have been one since I'm 23. Councillors are weird, right? We are weird people. Right, I was not called to the priesthood. I was called to be a counselor. Right, it's a vocation. Giving up all of these hours of your life when you should be doing other things with your life in the pursuit of a council to create a better Basildon and a better place to live and raise your families and all the rest of it. But I get that for most people, you don't know what the council does, and you don't like the decisions that are being made, and like the stuff that appears on social media. I get why most people just sit there and go, "Why are they doing
Mm,
that? Like, what on
mm.
earth?" And all we have tried to do, I tried to do it on Facebook Live during the COVID pandemic. I've tried to do it now, or when I was the leader on there. I've tried to do it with this podcast, is to just explain a little bit more about why these decisions are being made. And listen, if that's helpful, hopefully it is, that's fine. I don't have a monopoly on that. Other people can
No.
have their opinions on that as well. But as we're seeing on here, they wouldn't come. Sam could not sit here for 2 hours and answer these questions. He is
No.
not. He has not got the
I
experience,
mean, I
and
mean,
he is not.
I'm agreeing with you because he's bottled it, but I would like to think that he might give it a go, because I think the reason why I'm keen to have him on is because he is currently the most prolific councillor in that council. You sit within that category of being prolific, and I think that because of what I do and how I get involved and how I present myself, we kind of form this kind of odd triad of political I don't know what the next word I'm trying to think of here, but you know, we're known for this, and I think that because people are saying, "Oh, get Sam on, get Sam on," it's all about Gavin, it's all about Gavin, guys. The concept is left versus right. Me and Gavin discussing politics from different perspectives. Sam should come on and just stop hiding from behind the chair and the chain and get amongst it, because it's like he's very quick off the mark to do things on Facebook, but he's never quick to come on and have this conversation with us. And I'll be honest with you, Sam, because I know you're still watching, is that I would give you the foresight of what I'm going to ask you before you come on. I would tell you the topics like I do with Gavin to say one, two, three, four, five, and six. This is what I'm going to say to you. This is what I want to talk about. I'm not telling you the questions I'm going to ask you, but these are the subjects. What's the issue with that? I don't understand what the issue with that is. But clearly he thinks that it's not credible. But Dean Robinson has made a comment here which I think sums him up in a nutshell. Funniest thing is Sam is sitting at home watching the podcast and slagging you two off. Embarrassing individual.
Could I
Mate,
just
don't
correct
watch
one
it,
thing?
be amongst it. Go
Can I
on.
just correct one thing, Dean? He's sitting in his mum's house because he doesn't actually have a house, and he keeps voting down houses that we're trying to build for 35-year-old men to get out of mummy's home so that they can actually have their own place to live and slag us off on Facebook as well. So just a point of clarification there.
My old mate Joe, we used to play football together years ago. Trial by combat is a good way to sort an argument. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do keep seeing the comments where people are saying that you two should put on some boxing gloves and have it out.
But again, right, just to come back to it, we can't contradict ourselves on the podcast. So we can't on the one hand say the culture and everything and we've got to take the fizz out of it, and then on the other hand say let's go and have a tear up, right? But the point is, what we need to get to is a situation where reform councillors are able to debate Labour councillors on policy, and they are able to come forward with that. So, for example, if you think that political assistance, spending £200,000 on political assistance is a good thing to do, if you think it is right that the taxpayer right now is paying for you to have some biscuits and sandwiches because you've been at work all day and then gone to a council, if that's your policy, right, come and debate it with councillors. I will ask you how you're going to find the money for it. How are you? What cuts are you going to make in? How is that fair? Where's the support for it? We can ask all those questions, but if they can't, that argument that Sam has made there, it's the same argument as to why he's the mayor of Basildon. He's the mayor of Basildon because he can then sit up there on the dais, go, point of order, puning them. He doesn't have to make any political arguments. He has to try and leave that to David Abraham, who's obviously turned his back on him at the last council meeting and won't do it. But he's trying to give it to Darren Gardner or whoever to go and make those arguments for him. And this is the problem, Sam. Like, you can do that for so long, but in the end, you are going to have to come forward and make a case. And you're what I think is really interesting there is that you're talking about Sam being one of the most prominent politicians. We've gone however long this podcast has been now, nearly an hour and 45 minutes. And we haven't mentioned Andy Barnes yet, who is actually the leader of the council. And I think
we never do. Weirdly, we never do.
He's just there, isn't he?
What would we say? Yeah, I'd look, and again, I'd have Andy Barnes on too. I'd like to ask Andy Barnes what his plans are, because I'm not sure what they are. I've got no idea, and I do follow his page, but I don't know what he's really doing.
Well, the line apparently from officers is, "What would Gav do?" and then follow it. That's the question that keeps getting asked. But my point is, just to finish on that, is that I think what Reform tried to do here strategically and tactically, and you remember we talked about this when we were in that whole thing about who was going to run the council, right? Is I think what Reform were betting on was that they would be able to say all of the unpopular decisions with the Tories and Andy Barnes and whatever else. I don't think that's what's happening. I think the public see that I'm not the leader of the council, so Sam Genet's now the leader of the council. So they're not, like, again, the geezer last night talking to me in the pub saying to me, we've got to get rid of Sam Genet and get you back as leader. Right now, from a Reform point of view, when there's £8 million worth of cuts coming in this budget, there isn't any clear blue water between Reform and the Tories here, and I think that that's going to cost them big time at the ballot box next May, and I think that's a big
Mm.
strategic mistake.
Got a question here from Fraser Massey, I think that reads. The screen that I'm looking at is very small. Does Gavin regret the comment he made in a public meeting regarding Councillor Barnes's daughter? Now, just to clarify, I don't know what he's referring to.
Neither do I.
So, no. Okay, we'll move on from that one then. And this next question sets us up for the final part of the show from Joe Gorham. Question for Gavin: is he centre left or far left?
Oh man, I'm basically a communist. Yeah, I'm so far left. It's
Do you know what?
honestly.
Do you know what's interesting is you saying that you're a communist? Is I've actually been accused of being a communist. I've actually been accused of being every single pejorative of the political spectrum,
Do you know in
and I think to myself, how could I ever be a Marxist? I mean, have you guys ever fucking read anything that I've posted or seen the videos that I send out? No way. You know.
But here's the interesting thing, right? In the council over the course of the last few years, Phil Turner used to always have this thing where he would refer to me as a socialist, and in the Labour group, all of the Labour councillors were like, "Have you ever met Gavin?" Like
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
like, to answer the question in politics, right? I do sometimes think we overcomplicate politics and we overcomplicate life, right? A lot of the time, right? The pond is always the deepest in the center, right? And if you're in politics, if you want to win political power, if you want to affect change, if you want to bring the public with you, what you'll find is that the majority of the public are sat in the center. That's where most of the votes are. That's where most of the people are. And I might as well now wear a T-shirt that says "Centrist Dad," right? Because and I think I've used the phrase on this podcast, Charlie, before, I've quoted Blair that whilst my mind may think conservatively with a small c about matters of economics, my heart beats progressive, and my soul will always belong to that of a rebel. Right, and that is my politics to a T. It is true that I'm quite commercial in terms of what I did on the council. I'm quite commercial in terms of how we turn revenue on the council. I have a small c approach to a lot of matters of economics. But on the kind of the social side of things, I am a rebel. I don't think Basildon is as good as it can be right now. I think it can be better. And I don't believe in trickle down economics. I don't believe it works. I don't believe it's ever worked. So no, I'm not a big nationalize everything like a communist, but I am probably more pro regulation than somebody on the right of politics.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and
There we go.
that's where I am.
For the people saying that I'm here rubbing your belly and giving you a back massage, we disagree on this.
Well, let me ask you: how is the right?
Finally, how many episodes have we had where you've not asked me a question? It's my time, guys. Like, buckle in.
Right, buckle in for this. Last week, Bev Craig became the mayor of Manchester, and
Uh-huh.
she destroyed the results. She destroyed everybody in her path. Bearing in mind, at the start of this, I think I said it on the podcast last week. At the start of this campaign, there was a lot of concern that actually Reform could do some damage in this, and obviously the Greens won the Gorton and Denton by-election. There's been some interesting stuff today from your mates in the right, Farage and Rupert Lowe. The right is split in three ways, yeah? And I think what's really interesting about that is that whether it's Reform or Restore, the Tories are coming bottom of that every single time, and they're coming out worse every single time. How do you think that the right is going to unite in this country?
Do you know what? The way that the right unites is removing ego and understanding that the people on the ground, the people that actually want to vote for right-wing politics, do not want to be governed by centrists. They don't. So, for example, when it comes to Reform UK, that should have been a natural home for somebody like me when they started gaining traction. When Nigel Farage asked me to join, I was on the phone with him and he said to me, this was back when Richard Tice was still leader. And I said, I really appreciate the invitation. I'll think about it. Now, some people might say, what was there to think about? Because as far as the right was concerned, he was the only name in town. He's not anymore, but at the time back then he was. And, you know, besides my political inspirations are first of all, it was Tony Blair because I enjoyed his charisma. I enjoyed the fact that he was a good orator. Like, very much like you, he was able to explain something in a way which was quite easy to understand.
I am not
And
worthy.
You're not worthy of this praise, no, because when I get off this call, I'm going to just text you and say you're a massive prick. But when it comes to Nigel Farage, there was something a little bit rougher about Nigel Farage, but still he spoke in a very similar language, the way I comprehended it as Blair did, even though they're very different men. Do you know what I mean by that? It's like they had a way of connecting, their words connected. So when I was invited to join Reform UK, I kind of sat on my hands and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to. And the reason for that was because I didn't believe in Richard Tice. And then when Nigel came back in, I knew he was going to with the Celebrity Jungle appearance. I knew that was the next step because why would you do it? Well, besides for the £1 million he got paid or more, I'd take £1 million to go on there and, touch a snake or whatever it is. No jokes, please. Um, and you fast forward to when I actually gave Nigel some candidates to join the party who were former Tories. I moved them over for him. There was something about the process where there was hope, not hate, being used as a vetting agency for reform candidates, which I didn't like. I found that really off-putting actually, because why would you go to somebody who is effectively out to destroy you and give them that kind of power? I don't like the failure to implement free speech as well within Reform UK. It seems to me that unless you are following Nigel Farage and his every word and you don't make a mistake to the letter, you either do that or you get kicked out. And I've known many people from Reform UK who have been kicked out for a bad joke, or for saying they like Tommy Robinson, or for cavorting with people in public that maybe Farage has a problem with. And I find that to be quite off-putting. But also, being a former Tory, I don't want to see Tories being brought in. And that's the biggest thing that people come up with as an objection to joining Reform, and why Rupert Lowe is gaining ground in different parts of the country is because there is this complete shutdown of we don't want Tories. Why would you want the people involved in your party who are guilty of destroying the country that you are now purporting you want to save? Like Nigel Farage has gone on and said that he doesn't trust the Tories. Boris Johnson screwed the country over. Boris Johnson screwed him over. Now he's bringing in Robert Jenrick, Suella Braverman. I think there was conversations to be had with Priti Patel being invited in.
Zahawi.
Uh, yeah, I mean Zahawi. I mean, my God, like when it comes to the COVID thing, he was one of the reasons why I left the Tories. The whole premise that you could have a government minister who knows fuck all about anything apart from business, you can't take that away from him, to come in and say, along with Sajid Javid, that a COVID jab should not be given to children, and then 6 months later saying that every child should have one. Nothing changed. The medicine didn't change, the data didn't change, but somehow you're going to take away my autonomy, my authority, I should say, as a parent, to say that my daughter should be given a jab against my parental will. No way in hell was I ever going to have that. And this is not to be critical of people who believe in the COVID vaccine. If you've taken one, good luck to you. If you've done your research and you decided without being under duress to take it, good luck to you. Well done. No criticism there at all. It's your body, therefore it should be your choice. But that government, Nigel Farage, only called me. This is the kicker. This is the thing that annoys me about the whole situation, because I wanted more from him. Nigel Farage only called me on the phone to praise me for leaving the Conservatives over the COVID stuff. So why then would you welcome in one of the architects of the problem itself? So when you look at someone like Rupert Lowe, who obviously has his own issues with Nigel Farage, who offers something to people which I don't know if you agree with anything that Rupert Lowe has to say. Maybe we can look at what he put in this video today by looking at some of the key points here. Is that when it comes to what reform should have stood for, this is it. Ending mass immigration, restoring our borders, not letting people come in willy-nilly. We saw what happened in Kuwait the other day, which people criticise me for calling Spain. I mean, the Spanish call it Spain, so therefore it's Spain. Restoring demographic security, reversing the Islamification of Britain. Again, people that would have voted for, you're shaking your head, but people that voted for reform would want this. They would want there to be a British ruling culture. There shouldn't be this pandering to outside cultures, a referendum on restoring the death penalty. That's an interesting one, actually, because whilst I would welcome that debate, I don't know how I'd vote on it because I believe that takes away the punishment, but that's a completely different rabbit hole. Restoring a self sufficient Britain, I agree with that, and restoring the country's faith in politics. Some of these things here are they're principles, they're not necessarily policies. Like restoring the country's faith in politics, well, that depends on the politician, right? If you've got bad politicians, you're going to get bad faith. And I also believe that we should be living within our means. We should be able to control inflation, but a politician will never be able to do that on their own. It will take cooperation with outside forces. I don't know how much of this you agree with, Gavin, but I don't think this is bad for people on the right wing who are looking for somewhere to go who are saying Nigel's too soft. And I do believe Nigel is quite soft, but after I've heard a bit from you, Nigel's response is actually very interesting on this. So whilst I've spent a bit of time there critiquing the man, the next bit I'm going to put on the screen might actually give him a bit of leeway with me.
Well, my view on this is that the reform strategy probably changed after the party conference season last year. So I think that Farage realised that when reform got to about 33% in the poll, that they had peaked, and that in a multi-party system, right? I don't believe that we're in a five-party system, right, at all. But right now, the conventional wisdom is that we're going to go into another general election and it be a three-way tie between Labour, Conservative, and Reform. Right? Apparently, that's what we're being told. So Farage knew that just getting to 32% in the polls wasn't enough, and that what he needed to do was to convince those kind of Church of England, soft Cameron Tories that he was a safe place to be, that he wasn't the Farage of the UKIP days where he was essentially the BNP in a smart suit, right? That actually he was different, that he was.
I don't agree with that,
No,
but
I'm
carry
not.
on.
I'm
You're
not saying
making
that
a
I
point. I
agree
don't
with that,
agree.
but that was
Okay.
a kind of a characterization of him in the press 10 years ago, and he was trying to shred that, right? He was trying to reinvent himself. That was the kind of the thinking and the theory, that he needed to make reform safe for those Tories to say, okay, I'm gonna come home. Now I might sort of sit there, if I'm being honest with you, and say, well, I don't think you really needed to do that, because you just won a load of county council elections in places like Kent and other
Mm.
parts of the country that are traditional Tory areas. You've already won them being reform. So why did you feel you had to move a little bit further towards the centre? And the way that Farage chose to do that was by bringing across Braverman, Jenrick, and Zahawi, and Kruger, and Rosendahl, and all those sorts of guys, bringing them over into the reform tent to kind of show the public. And now I think that massively backfired. I really do. So I think
I do too.
when you started to see at the turn of this year reform's numbers coming down, I think that was in large part a reaction to the likes of Jenrick and Rosendahl and all those kind of guys. Like every time they're on telly, I mean, Sam says we lack credibility. Fuck me, what does Robert Jenrick lack? Like he has got no credibility whatsoever. The kind of the immigration minister that came up with asylum hotels now telling everybody what a terrible thing they were. But I also think that they're being dragged because the whole kind of Yaxley Lennon marches, the whole kind of restore Britain coming out from nowhere and starting to get sort of 7-8% in the polls and eat into them. It's tried to drag them further to the right. And I saw something today which I thought was a really interesting quote, and I just got it here, where somebody said, when historians look back on UK politics, they will struggle to explain why reform, which never had more than 8 MPs, was treated as though it was a government in waiting, especially given that it had a deeply unpopular leader who acted like he was a front for a crime syndicate. Right? And I do think that's quite an interesting
Who?
take.
Well, who's the unpopular leader?
Farage is unpopular. So when you look at all of
Where?
the in the UK, like when you look at the
I'll have a day
polling,
off.
no, but Charlie, he himself,
He's not unpopular. You're a smart
he
guy. I
is
don't
unpopular.
want to be
He is unpopular.
condescending, but you know that he's not unpopular.
He has a ceiling, and he reached it last year. And this is the point. Like there is about 30% of the country who like him and who think that he's the sun shines out of his arse and everything's great. I mean, he still talks about how he led the country to Brexit, like that was a fucking good thing. I would stop talking about that if I was him, right? But he's got a ceiling, and it is about 30% of the country, and it's not enough to win. You have to, and so listen, don't get me wrong, right? People will be sitting there shouting at their screens going, what about Keir Starmer, what about Keir Starmer, right? You have to build a team of people around you. Now he chose to build it with Zia Yusuf and Richard Tice and all of those guys.
Mm.
I don't think that's a wise move either, if I'm being honest with you. And I think all of the stuff, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, all this stuff with the £5 million donations and when were the loans being repaid, it just makes them look dodgy, right? Whether they are or not, it's what it makes them look.
Mm.
And I think Farage is there. The other thing that I think is slightly off in terms of the characterization is, why do people vote for reform, right? And I remember living in the northeast of England when I was at university, right? 2007, 8, 9, 10. And it's almost like unheard of that in the northeast, like Newcastle City Council was not a Labour council, right? It was run by the Liberal Democrats. Because I always remember they came up with this really bonkers policy that you couldn't sell a shot for £1 anywhere in the city, so all the bars made it 99p. The laws of unintended consequences. I thought it was brilliant. Typical Lib Dem nonsense, right? But they were in control. They were running the council, and it was because people needed to rebel against Labour. They were the incumbent government at the time. The Tories hadn't sorted themselves out properly, and the Liberals were the third party in British politics that they could use to give them a kick in. 2 years later, Labour won Newcastle's seats. I think the 3 seats were like 15,000 majorities. Like, it wasn't in doubt. So we get closer to the general election. I don't think it is the case that everybody who is voting for reform believes in the death penalty, believes in savage cuts to the
Well,
welfare state.
I'm not sure that Reform do believe the death penalty. I think the death penalty question is a Restore Britain question that wants to be asked.
It's
I'm not too
interesting
sure
about that. When I worked in Parliament, the Speaker's office used to say that behind the Speaker's chair in the House of Commons is the petitions bag, basically, right? And any MP can put the petition in there. And every single year I worked in Parliament, the number one petition every year was for the death penalty. So it's
really.
something that's been around for a long time, where people want to debate whether or not they would vote for the legislation, right, is another thing, but they would want a debate about it. But that was something that was there. The other thing that's on the Rupert Lowe stuff there is, again, I think people need to think through, is this thing about cuts to the welfare state, right? We got to get reforms to the welfare state, and we've got to get that moving in the right direction. But I think, and a lot of this comes from the conversations that I've been having recently with people, this kind of line that the Tories pursued right through to I think it was the 2017 general. They ditched it after that. But up until the 2017 general, about the country living within its means and about we need austerity and the rest of it. I don't think the country's there, Charlie. I think people are 20 years on from the financial crisis. Life is tough. Life is hard. The cost of living is biting. Wages are stagnant. They've not kept pace with the cost of living. I don't think Joe Public gives a shit where the money comes from. They just want their lives to be improved. And if that means that, this generation is going to spend some money that the next generation is going to pay for, I think that there is almost a consensus amongst the public of, we'll spend it then. Because, whether it's investing in your local area, building the swimming pool, I'm making it up, right? But that kind of stuff. I think the public are like, I don't care how much it costs now. We've had the years of austerity. We've been told to live within our means. We've done all of that. We're sick of it. We don't want any of that. So I'm not sure that message will resonate in the way the right think it will.
Well, Jono thinks 30% is high. That's millions of people. Doesn't really equate to being unpopular. Joe Gorham is making himself very busy in the comments tonight.
What do the 70% of the people think of him? Because that would be the majority, wouldn't it?
They're all voting Rupert Lowe. Joe Gorham, again, look, plain and simple, solve the illegal immigration problem. People are seriously hacked off about this. Deploy the Royal Navy into the channel and turn these people around. I agree with that sentiment. I think that immigration plays a massive part in people's disdain for politicians, especially given that every government, as far as I can tell, has said they'll control it, and they don't. So we've got that. I know you're going to want to wax lyrical about some Labour numbers, but let's be honest, we've all got eyes. We can see that it's not going down. We can see it's a massive problem.
Well, no, it is going down. It's not. It's not where it should be. But like, this is the thing about the immigration problem, right? And I would just respectfully say, yes, it 100% needs to be looked at and it needs to be controlled. Number two, it wasn't happening, was it, before Brexit? Right. So that might be another reason why Brexit has failed. Number
Yeah, it's
three,
one of the most annoying things about being a Brexiteer is that the numbers have gotten so much worse, and I voted for Brexit, and I find that to be, very frustrating because just to make the point, I didn't vote for Brexit just because it was an immigration question. There was financials involved, which I thought would improve for us on the flip side of it as well. I also like the idea of having some sort of financial oversight being conducted by elected British politicians that actually reside in the country, not as part of a multinational collective. But the immigration was obviously a huge factor for so many people that I think that if Brexiteers are honest, they might still say that in principle we don't regret the vote, but in practice we regret the politicians we were left to deal with it.
yeah, I mean, I think if that gives people comfort, then take comfort from it. But
Well,
I think the
well, it
reality
was it
is,
was
yeah, but look, the reality of it is that we had a returns agreement in place with European countries. We had the Dublin Accord. We had those things where any immigrant who came, or any asylum seeker rather, who turned up in any safe country could be returned to that country. So Britain was able to send people off every single week into those places, safe and legal routes, and all that sort of stuff, which meant that actually they would never get to British shores
well
because
that that
they
that
would
actually
be.
speaks to my point about bad politicians, because if there were people there actually negotiating that and successfully doing so, this
But
problem
why
would
would
be
the
were
but
half
this
as bad.
But why would any European country give you that if you leave the European Union? Why is it in their interests to do it? I mean, but my broader point on this is that yes, solving the small boats crisis is the right thing to do. It's incredibly dangerous, and it's also there needs to be proper ways to deal with it. But I don't believe that even if that happens, and GB News, yeah, it was quite funny. There was actually a clip, I was going to put it on my social media, of the guy on GB News who was basically having to say, Shabana Mahmood might be getting this right because the numbers have come down quite significantly. And it was so uncomfortable for GB News to actually have to say that out loud, that a Labour government is seemingly turning the tide on it. It's not over yet, and there's still a long way to go, but that it's heading in the right direction. But my point is that even if you solve that, I think there's a lot more that needs to happen to improve people's lives.
I agree with you. I'll let you catch your breath there and talk for a second. But yeah, I agree. Like people do have other issues to contend with. There's no doubt about it. But I think people like from a long-term perspective, people are actually thinking, right, well, I've got children, I've got grandchildren. The country is falling into a state of uh, uh, being completely unrecognizable. There are look, I was born in Barking in some call it the east end of London, some call it Essex, but I like to call it the East End of London. Um, and if I was to go back to Barking today and look at that town versus when I left, it's completely different demographically, architecturally. There's obviously new things being built, things have been taken down. Like it's a completely different world. And the weird thing about Barking is that you'd never think it was in England. And people will criticize me for saying that if they think that that's an off-color remark. I don't really care. I lived there, you guys didn't, and I'm seeing it. And this is the problem: is that people are saying, well, it's a Muslim area. It's got all these different cultures. It's a black area. It's this. It's that. And whilst these things in principle are completely fine, they're not bad things to say that you've got different demographics in different parts of the country. But when you've got areas that are completely taken over, people see that and they think, well, I can't relate to these people. It does come down to relatability. If when things move too fast, people get scared. And people get scared because they don't have anything in common with their neighbours anymore. And this is the issue. And I think that people don't articulate it in the way that I've just done it because people don't have the opportunity to do so. But if they were able to actually get a word in edgeways against people always shouting racist, 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 they would actually probably say what I've just said, which is
But
that we
I'm
just want to live in a safe society with people that we recognise
but
as
I
our
also
neighbours.
I'm interested in the political strategy of this. So where did the Tories go with this?
What do you mean? The
So
Tories go
like
with what?
so like again, we're talking about Farage, we're talking about Rupert Lowe. We're not talking about Kemi Badenoch. And I know,
Again,
earlier on, Andy Barnes came back at one of my posts and going on about how we live in five-party politics and people are just voting for whomever, and look at what happened in Rochford. It's like, right, that's the fucking barometer. Like, it's been a staunch Tory place forever and a day. You got battered in
mm,
May at the elections, right? But my point is this: is the Tories in Basildon, in seats that they were winning, came fourth behind the Greens. Last week in Manchester, bearing in mind that the Tories used to run Bolton Council, they used to have members of Parliament in Greater Manchester. All right, they're not going to win the Greater Manchester combined authority. I appreciate that, but they came fifth. Restore beat the Tories in Manchester last week,
mm,
right?
yeah,
That's not just a tactical vote. That is people who perhaps were in the Conservative Party under Boris, under Theresa May, under David Cameron, who now feel like they've got other places to go. And I just think, it comes back almost to the point we were making about Basildon, right? In that Sam Genet has overtaken Andy Barnes and Phil Turner and all the rest of it. Where on earth do the Tory party go? How do they become relevant? How does anybody? And there's this kind of like loving with like the Westminster commentariat about Kemi Badenoch and her performances lately and all the rest of it. And she came to Barleylands and shouted at someone about anti-Semitism, and it went viral. And everyone was like, "Oh, isn't this wonderful? She's great."
mm.
I just don't see anything from the Conservative Party.
There's no policy. It's like there's nothing to talk about. There's no meat. It's just I
But
get
should
bored
they
of
go to the
rhetoric.
right? Should they go more to the right, or should they be sat there thinking, the Cameron Tories in the centre, the Church of England going Tories, we need them to stick with us. So actually, what we're going to do is we're going to say, do you know what, Rupert Lowe? Do you know what, Reform? You're wrong about all of that stuff. Come over here to sensible Conservative. Is that what they should do, or should they try and out reform?
Well, there was conversations that were being had a long time ago about Rupert coming into the Conservative Party and taking it over. This was before Restore Britain got started, and I don't know what happened, but I think this is kind of convoluted, really. But there was a conversation at the time between Robert Jenrick and Rupert Lowe, and there was conversation there about them working together. So I think the vehicle of the Conservative Party is what I'm trying to make the point about is still it's recognizable. It's a good brand in terms of recognizability and yesteryear politics. The fact that the Tories can't go a day without talking about Margaret Thatcher tells you how much they haven't moved in the last 30 or 40 years.
Mm.
Because how can you still be saying, "Oh my God, Thatcherism, we need to get back to what Margaret did"? You know, Tony Blair was your most successful prime minister by a country mile. People don't talk about Tony Blair with the same um, nostalgic reverence.
We're
People can
doing this
still
house.
respect him. Yeah, but you can still respect some of the things that he did and how effective he was. But like, there isn't that. Oh, like you don't get Labour politicians now going, we want to be Blairites. We need to get back to Blairism because by nature the left is progressive, so you're moving forward. The problem with the Conservative Party, and I'm not saying I agree with the direction that you're taking things forward, but I'm just saying that's what you do. Now, with the Conservative Party, it's like they're always looking backwards to the successes of Thatcher and Churchill, and it's always a justification for their failings today. So, what do I think the Conservative Party could do? Probably grow a pair, stop letting CCHQ being run by closet Lib Dems, and actually, accept that, you need to change. Like, the reason why reform is, or the reason why you have a Nigel Farage is the same reason why you have a Tommy Robinson, because government failed on issues that people cared about, and the government was too late to realise. That's it. This is opportunism. The reason you've got Nigel Farage is because there was an opportunity to make a point and make a stand, and credit to him. I know you're not a fan of him, but bloody effective. Bloody effective. And who in the Conservative Party now do you look at and go, that's the one for me? You know, Rupert Lowe is spoken about every single day online. He's spoken about on Facebook. There's groups dedicated to him. I don't see Kemi Badnoch groups. I don't see people saying Kemi Badnoch is fantastic. And if you got rid of her, who then? Who after?
Yeah, I mean,
Jacob Rees-Mogg, maybe. You know, I quite like him as a quirky individual. I've met him. He's a very charming guy, but you know, he's the only famous name that I can think of that would have any household name recognizability. You know, he's just not. There's no one there. So where do you go? Bring back Boris? I mean, God forbid.
I think the issue that the Tories are facing is probably very similar to what the Labour Party faced in 2010, which is that our next prime minister wasn't even an MP yet. And I suspect that that's probably where the Conservative Party is. The next Conservative prime minister of this country is probably not yet a member of Parliament. And
Mm,
I think there's this. There's always been in the Tory Party, isn't there? You see it in Basildon. We talked about Schrader, Christ earlier on. This born to rule mentality that it's their gift
yeah,
to run the show. I
yeah.
honestly think that they don't quite understand the existential crisis that they're in right now. When Blair won
Mm,
in '97 and smashed them, and they went down to 190 odd MPs or whatever, that was one thing. But in 2024, they went down to 131, I think, or 121 MPs, and that was before reform really took off. So if reform and restore can start to really eat away and win parliamentary seats, it could get a lot worse for the Conservatives. And I do think on the left, and I think this is why I reject this notion that we're living in five-party politics. I think on the left there will be tactical voting, right? So I do believe that there will be people that are sitting there now saying to themselves, do I want Nigel Farage to be prime minister? Absolutely not. I do not want it. And between between Labour, Green, and Liberal Democrat, there are more of those voters than there are reform voters. And so, as a result of that, I think that they will tactically vote. And you will see that in a lot of the areas where Labour needs to win in order to get over the 326 mark, Labour will be able to do that in the next general election. I think that's a combination of things, right? I think one, it's a kind of a united detest of Farage, but I also think it's the fact that people on the left probably will like Burnham and a lot of what he's about when he talks about the working class and what we need to do to change the economy to support them. And
I
I,
mean, I
I
quite
think
like him. And he's not even my flavour.
Yeah, and there was, I mean, we won't get into it now, but there was a whole document that came out on Thursday called "The Rewiring of the State," and what that was a document that the cabinet had produced to send round Whitehall to talk about how they were going to make decisions. And it was like you're reading it and you're like, God, this guy's thought about this. Like it was all
Mm,
about how in any decision that any cabinet minister is going to make, this is how the criteria you're going to have to set a whole new framework, which again, for decision making in Whitehall, that is a really good thing, a positive thing. But I Andy Barnes and people like that, like I said it at the time, giving legs up to reform, getting into bed with reform here. It's interesting that the Essex County Council Conservatives are not doing it. And they are attacking reform and they're trying to show the clear blue water between the different parties. In places like Basildon and in Thurrock and Rochford and those places, I don't think it's a wise move to have become so close to them because ultimately it's that thing, isn't it, of why would you vote for Kemi when you can have Nigel if that's what you want? Right? If
mm.
you're all in that wing of the right and you're all kind of moving further and further to the right, I disagree with you about the fact that most people on the right don't want to be governed in the centre. Again, I think there is an awful lot of people who consider themselves centre right who are utterly afraid of what reform might do. In the same way that for me, when I was in the centre left, I was like, I can't have Jeremy Corbyn as the prime minister. Like that would be a disaster.
But
So
yeah,
like,
but are you saying that Farage is far right?
no, but I'm not. I think Rupert Lowe is. I think some of the stuff that Rupert Lowe comes out with, I think is far right. I think that Farage is radical right. I do, and the reason I say that is, and I think I might have mentioned it last week, and I will get the quote and put it online. But the what Nick Griffin was espousing in the Barking, and very interesting you mentioned Barking, right? But in the 2010 general election, in his manifesto in Barking, what he was putting out there that everybody was saying, Jesus Christ, that is just like far right BNP Nazism, all that kind of stuff that he was getting. 16, well, 14 years later, when Nigel Farage was standing in Clacton, it was a carbon copy of what he was saying. And there hadn't there, but the difference was that the country had moved into a position where that language was normalized and that language was seen as acceptable, and that all that. I don't think, again, I don't think that is
the
where the
language
country.
they're using is talking to a problem. See, I can't remember the Nick Griffin campaign you're referring to. I do know roughly. I don't know the exact manifesto or literature that he was putting out, but I can work it out in my head roughly what you're getting at. So the words don't resonate if there isn't a problem, right? So maybe when Nick Griffin was saying these things, it didn't resonate. Now it does. Why? Then you have to ask the question, why? Why does
But
it resonate with people now? What's gone
but
wrong?
but it's also it's well, what's gone wrong is the country voted to leave the European Union. That's what went wrong. But there's also an element of where if you are continuously fed this stuff over and over and over again, and it is all consuming, that all of your problems will be solved if we stop the small boats crisis. That you'll have access to housing, you'll have access to jobs, you'll have access to more money, the country will be richer, all of that kind of. If you're constantly told that stuff by GB News, by X, by Facebook every single day, you come to believe it. And it's like when I put something out earlier on about what Migration Watch they're not like right, left, or whatever. Like, their job is to literally stand there counting how many people are coming over on boats, right? And the numbers are up here, they're down there, whatever. And they basically said when they, I think it went up to the 29th of July, so halfway through last week, and they basically said, look, yeah, there's been a spike in the last 2 weeks where it's gone up, but the 2026 number is like half what it was at its peak. And I put that graphic on, and underneath you've got everyone going, "Oh, what a load of bollocks!" You used the line, "Your eyes don't lie to you," and all this sort of stuff, right? If you can't believe and accept that the number is actually coming down, that what the government is doing is having an effect, hasn't eradicated it, but is having an effect, then where do we go as a country when it comes to facts? Like, and what would it be once the small boat crisis stops? It'll be another distraction over here, and
I
I,
don't think
I
they're distractions. I mean, you just have to look around, Gavin, and see the impact of it. We were talking about housing as the main topic of tonight's episode, right? Because it's majorly important. If you've got an influx of people coming in, right? And I have to be honest, many immigrants that come to this country come with dependents. Many of them don't work. If you just look at the Muslim community as a whole, over half do not work. That's a fact. Government fact. So I'm not against looking at government data. I'm really not. The problem is that, as I've said about politicians in general, it's half truths, and telling you that part of the story whilst leaving out that part of it. People can see that, let's say for example, right, I'll concede for the sake of this debate that the numbers have gone down this year. But they were up and they were up and they were up and they were up and they were up every month for years prior. So whilst you've made a point about this part of the story, the bigger story is fucking huge. And the problem with that is that when you've got population growth, you don't know where some of these people are coming from. I know, look, I dated a girl once who had come over from Nigeria. She was working as a carer. She was studying at university. She brought her mum over. Her mum didn't have a job. Her mum wasn't doing anything. She was staying in her daughter's accommodation as part of a education deal that she had to be at university, right? Probably wasn't quite legal, right? How many more people do you think do that? And if
well,
you
I think
factor in the fact that you've
well,
got so many people that come here that do not work and just claim benefits, I mean, you're like I say, your eyes don't lie. Walk around Whitechapel. None of those
you
motherfuckers there
can't you
work.
can't yeah, but you can't claim benefits unless you are given residency. And the other side of it, which I would say, is that Shabana Mahmood has been very clear, and part of the reason why I think we will potentially get to even zero in terms of net migration this year is that she recognised that problem around visas and dependents, and that she clamped down on it. So that's why we went from about
Okay,
700,000 down to 200 odd thousand in the last quarter.
you said a moment ago that people that come here do not get benefits unless they've been given residency. Yet
You can't be an you can't be an asylum
we
seeker and claim
know
benefits. Yeah.
that if you come here and claim asylum, you'll be put in a hotel. We've seen this. There's video evidence of this. There's health care doctors on site. There's dentists that come in to the hotels. They're given food. They're given things to do, aka playing PlayStation, right? It's all men. Everything I've just listed there, I would consider a benefit. Because
All
if
right.
I
So
if I come over tomorrow from another country, or forget that, let's say I went homeless tomorrow,
yeah,
what am I being given as a British white male
you're
with a
going to
with a
get
kid?
you're going to be
I'm
put in a
being given.
hotel.
Yeah. I'll be given fuck all. I'll be put in a hostel. I won't get no free healthcare. I won't get a weekly visit from the dentist or get me immunisations on the free. I'll
Okay,
be
so I
told to pull my socks up and suck it up. And you
well,
know I'm right.
I don't know that the frequency of those GP appointments, the rest of it is where you're at. I know you get paid £8 a week sustenance if you're in an asylum hotel, or you get the meals. If you don't take the meals, you get £8 a week. Part of the problem, right, and part of the issue with that is that the rules were changed under the last Labour government. The rules were changed to mean that whilst you are appealing for or applying for asylum, you're not able to work. So prior to that change, asylum seekers could come here and they could start working. So they were not drawing down money on the state. The second thing is, I would say on this, you talk about the language around it being huge and all that kind of stuff. If we put every single person who's an asylum seeker over the course of the last 5 years, who's in an asylum hotel or a HMO, if we put every single one of those people in Wembley Stadium, it would still be two-thirds empty, right? So we can sometimes talk about this as
But
if
it
we're
but
talking
it,
about
it's still
millions and
one
millions of
third
people.
too full.
But my point, Charlie, is we can talk about this, and a lot of these people, and I saw the language, all this sort of stuff on social media about millions and millions of people. It's not millions of people. It's tens of thousands. The deportations are up, which is a good thing that the Labour government have been able to do, and we need to crack it. My point, and the reason why I bring it back to this is, I don't get where the right go on this. So I don't get where Kemi Badenoch positions herself, where we're having this debate where you're saying to me that you should be with Farage, but Farage is a bit too soft, so you're thinking more towards Restore and Rupert Lowe. So from Farage's point of view, he hears that and he thinks, right, okay, so I've got to appeal more over here, but then I'm going to lose some of these Tories that Kemi's got over there, and then I can't get beyond 30% in the polls, and therefore, how do I
Well,
form a
I
government?
actually agree with what you said earlier on about this not being a five-party race. I do actually think it's just going to be a two-horse race like it always is, because people are going to make deals. And you mentioned how the left will make their deals, and I can bet any money that there will be deals made between Reform, the Tories, and Restore. There's no doubt about it. There will be some sort of arrangement being made. And I said this the
Well, it
moment
was in
that,
19.
yeah, I said this, yeah, and look how that worked out for everybody. Terrible. But, I said this from day one that when Reform started getting a bit of traction, that they will still never get the numbers to take on the whole centre right or right wing of British politics. And because we're talking about that, let's bring up this image here because we're gonna come back to the conversation about Rupert offering an olive branch to Nigel Farage and Restore Britain. So you saw the principles earlier on in the show of what Rupert stands for in the video he posted today. It's 12 minutes long. We're not going to broadcast it here. Go and find it online if you want to see word for word what Rupert said, but it is basically nuts and bolts of how I described it earlier on. Nigel Farage responded indirectly, I would say, to what Rupert Lowe put out, and I'll read it out for those watching. The next election will be an existential fight to save the country we love, a mission I have now been fighting for over 30 years. After two national election victories in as many years, many people now recognise that it will be a binary choice between Reform UK and Labour. I suppose ultimately that's probably going to be true because I think that it will be a Labour leader or Reform leader that controls those kind of left and right coalitions at the next general. Farage continues, with the prospect of an early general election increasingly likely, it is natural that people from across the political spectrum are considering which side of that fight they intend to be on. Patriotic voters believe in many of the same things, but only one party truly has the possibility of delivering change. I think he's referring to himself there. To deliver that change, I understand Reform UK will need the support of people from other parties. There we are, as well as millions who have never voted before. That is a broad coalition that I am building. Well, he's never said that before today, before Rupert's video. Over the last 18 months, I've demonstrated that our movement will always be open to anyone who shares our commitment to restoring Britain's borders, rebuilding our economy, renewing our democracy, and putting British people first. Well, I could query every single point of that statement there. My previous history in politics has also shown that I am always prepared to put country before party, as I did in 2019, but I will never turn my back on my team. Mm. There will always be a home in Reform UK for those who believe that 14 years of Conservative government, followed by the last 2 years of Labour, have failed the British people, and that our country now needs a fundamentally different direction. I will continue to do whatever is necessary to defeat the left and provide Britain with the strong, serious leadership it deserves. This is the last chance for our country, and we cannot afford to waste it. What do you make of all that?
I think he's worried about Clacton in 2 weeks'
Right.
time.
Yeah.
I think the video, there was also a video, I think it was yesterday, that he posted where he was pleading with people in Reform from all over the country to come to Clacton to help him. So I don't know, he'll win the by-election, but there's obviously going to be a proper by-election later on in the year after the parliamentary commissioner finds him guilty of being dodgy with his 5 million quid. And I think he's worried about that and what could happen. Say the bin, for example, gets 45% and he gets 55%. That's not convincing, is it? Because then if the Tories stand and the Restore Party stands in the by-election and he dips below the 50% mark, there's always danger there for him. So I think there's an element of that. I also think we're at a tipping point. Like there's 3 years left to the general election. I mean, this idea that there'll be an early general election, there won't be an early general election. But I think we are going to enter very quickly into the second half of this parliament. And I think he is also aware of the fact that, as much as I'm contradicting myself here, but as much as I think Kemi is in trouble, I think that when it comes to the general election, it will either be a Labour Prime Minister or a Conservative one. And whether it's a Conservative one with a Farage and Restore coalition, which I just can't see happening or working, to be honest with you, I think he's trying to lay the foundations that it's possible for all three of them on the right to work together. Now, as I said, and you kind of alluded to, in 2019, when he was running the Brexit Party, he stood down from standing in a lot of seats in places like Sunderland in the northeast and elsewhere, which if he hadn't have done that, he did stand in some of those places, but he stood down in others. If he'd have really gone for it, then Boris would never have got the result that Boris had got, and it would have made it a much more interesting parliament in terms of the coalition. But I just get the sense that he's worried about Restore. He's worried about what they did in Makerfield, where they got the 8% or whatever it was. They've got another 8% in the Manchester by-election. And he's sitting there thinking, that's 8% that should be in my corner. And I come back to it all the time, right? You've got to get to the magic 35. 35% in the first past the post system is where you need to be in order to be competitive to win a parliamentary majority. Farage has never got there. He's never been at 35% in the polls. And actually, consistently in 2026, Reform have been going down in the polls. And what Rupert Lowe is doing is only hurting that. He's not helping that in terms of getting to 35%. So
do you think that that statement there by Nigel Farage is an indirect return to Rupert's video? Many people have said it is. I think it reads as such, but it's kind of it's half contradictory in a way, because it's saying we'll work with people who want to fight for our country, but that's obviously not true because you kicked Rupert out.
But this is what Farage is, though, Charlie. Like it's all ego, and I mean it's like Reform, right? Reform UK is not a political party, right? And I'm sorry if Sam's still watching, right? But once Nigel goes, it's over, right? There is
I've always said this. I agree with you on this. Yeah,
there is nothing like Zia Youssef or Matt Goodwin or these guys. None of them are going to carry into the country what Farage does. And that's why, I also don't even think Farage goes all the way, because take this as think this through. Farage is not a young man. He's in his mid-60s or whatever he is now, right? Is Farage really going to go into the next general election in 2029 lose it, like not lose it, like he'll be elected as the MP for Clacton, right? But not be in government and have to sit in opposition again, and then do that till he gets into his early 70s. Like we all know, and it's obvious by the trouble he's in. Farage likes a few quid, right? So if he's got an opportunity to go and earn some money doing other things around the world, is he going to sacrifice that in order to be in opposition for 10 years in the British Parliament? I can't see it.
Well, we all like a few quid, but you know, when you leave number 10, you tend to make a few more.
Yeah, but he's
So
never going to be the prime minister, Charlie. Like honestly, like this is the thing that
what
I
what if you're
really.
what if you're wrong? What if he is? I mean, you
Then he's
know,
got to get to 35% in the polls, and he has to his favorability, like, again, this is the other thing, his favorability. You were talking earlier on about Thatcher and all those sorts of people, right? I can honestly tell you, and a local election is one thing when you get a 35-40% turnout. When you get a 65% turnout in a general election, those 20% make a massive difference, right?
mm,
In a
mm.
place like Sunderland, where obviously I know quite a bit of what goes on up there because of my connections there, they recoil at the idea of Margaret Thatcher closing the mines and creating havoc in those parts of the world. They haven't forgiven the Tories for all of that. So having the heir to Thatcher and Nigel Farage coming along saying that we're going to take the right and we're going to do this, that's not going to be appealing to those people. So that's why he's got
He's
to.
he's not the same as Margaret Thatcher, though, is he? He's
No, but what I'm saying
he's
is
not close to that.
he has to go the other way. So at the moment, like you're looking at it, and a lot of people are looking at it going, right, he's got to go to the right. He's got to go and meet Rupert Lowe over here. What I'm saying is that's not going to win you a general election. He's got to look to the left. So within the right, he's got to look
So
to the left and
so
go
if
more
if
towards the
you
Conservatives.
if you were going to be a very unlikely, this is quite an unfeasible thing to ask you actually, if you were going to be a political advisor to the right wing in general, how would you advise them to win?
I think it is hard right now. I do, because they've obviously in the latter stages of the last Tory government, they obviously tried to go down the culture wars and they tried to stoke that up in order to make that a thing that energized the public. And actually, ultimately, right, what people vote on is the pound in their pocket, right? If you're going to put Liz Truss, sorry, I know she's your mate, right? If you're going to put Liz Truss in to be the prime minister of this country, she's going to crash the mortgage economy. She's going to, get people going from paying £1,000 a month to paying £3,000 a month on the mortgage. You ain't going to win a general election, right? You ain't going to be forgiven
Mm,
for that. And I do think there's an element of, it takes time for the public to forgive political parties, right? In this country, we don't have a tradition of changing party every 4 years. It's almost like 8 years of Obama, 4 years of Republicans, 4 years of Biden, 4 years of like that doesn't happen here. We tend to elect
mm.
for generations in the UK, and that's why again I think the public will get to 2029 and say, do you know what? Better the devil, we're going to give them another 5 years and see what they can do in the Labour Party. And I think that's where we will end up. The British public are more fair-minded people, right, on that stuff. But I mean, if they want to pay me £5 million to go and advise them on how to win a general election on the right, I can open a crypto account if that's what
Yeah,
you have to do
you,
with
what, what,
Farage.
what, what you'll do is you'll take the money and give them terrible advice. I can see that coming a mile away.
No, but to be honest with you, Charlie, I don't know what the advice is that they can go on, because this thing about like essentially boil down what Rupert Lowe has said there, right? It is spending multi millions of pounds on deportations, right? In legal challenges, all that kind of stuff. Spend multi million pounds on legal challenges. But at the same time, saying that the country's got to live within its means, so therefore have savage cuts to public services and austerity. So I can tell you that the non-protected areas, right? So the NHS will be protected, defence will get protected. So the non-protected areas will be local government, transport, and welfare. So you'll go after those budgets in order to pay for it. We've just done that. We've just had
Mm.
10 years of austerity where Osborne and Eric Pickles and all those guys would do it. It didn't fucking work. And it has ended up with the country sitting here going that the social infrastructure is ruined. There's social disconnection everywhere. We're all looking for reasons to people to blame, all that kind of stuff. When ultimately it was an austerity program that has killed so much of what's gone on in this country. And essentially, what I've read there from the right is let's do more of it. And I don't think that is a recipe to succeed.
Well, I've got something at home on my bookcase, which is a Restore Britain book basically. It's a mass deportations policy paper, which I might be named in some on one of the pages. Um, but that is a fully costed document. Now, I would like I would like for you to read it.
Fully
I know you
costed.
like to, I would like for you. Well, it explains that what you're saying there is not true, but I'd like you to read it. Would you read it?
Of course, I would.
Yeah, there we go.
I'll read anything. But again, I think there's a difference between what they think is fully costed today and then what it is actually going to cost. A bit like the Rwanda policy, where it all looked good on paper and then it ended up costing £400 million and we didn't deport a single person. So like,
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah. That was a bad scheme. Yeah.
yeah, so that's I think it's all again, we
It's
can all sit.
a lot of this is like putting the cart before the horse. It's like unless you get rid of the legal blockages, you're always going to be held up with litigation and judicial
And
review. So
and then there's a question, isn't there, about the ECHR and all the rest of it. Do you want
yeah,
your human rights taken off you by the British government so that the state can then start doing whatever they want to you? Do I want that to happen to me, all for the sake of, as I say, a third of Wembley Stadium to go after them? So
the problem is with that is that the context there is you've completely stripped half the story away. There's not a removal of human rights by leaving the ECHR. It's creating a new Bill of Rights for the modern British era because our last Bill of
who's
Rights was
making
written
that?
in 1689 was the last British Bill of Rights. I mean, that's a long time ago.
No. The ECHR was written by
No,
British
no.
lawyers.
Yeah. Hear me out though. It's a European doctrine. The last British Bill of Rights was written in 1689. If you're leaving the European Union and you want to leave everything to do with European oversight, you need to get rid of that too and create your own foundation to move forward from.
Who's going to
Now,
write that? And are you going to get that done in one parliament?
politicians will write it
They won't.
as they write everything else. Look, all I'm saying to you is that when there's a will to get these kind of things done, there'll be a way. And what you're saying about taking away human rights, it's such a like a scaremonger phrase to use
It's not.
because human rights were invented by humans. You all you need is one. Of course, it was. All you need
Tell
is
that to the
one.
people who were in slavery.
Right. So where were their human rights?
Exactly.
So what?
Where
Yeah,
were
that's what I'm
they?
saying.
That's
Yeah,
been
you're making
enshrined
my
in
point for
law.
me. You're
No,
making my point for me
no.
that a human right can be given or taken by
It
people
wasn't
who
enshrined into law, was
sign
it? Once it was enshrined
what?
into law, I think it was the 13th Amendment. Once it was enshrined into law, and then you had a Bill of Rights, and you had, further down the line, you had ECHR. You had to have legislation and you had to have bills of rights in order for human beings to stop being exploited. When you didn't have
That's what
those
I just
things,
told you.
people were exploited.
That's what I just told you. You're saying you take your human rights away. They're not being taken away. They're being replaced under a different legal framework.
Right.
It's not.
And
It's
then
not a
I'm saying,
removal. You're
I'm saying to you, you have no idea how that's going to be done, who's going to write it, how that's going to be taken, and ultimately, once you've done all of that and you've
well.
spent all
We'll
that
follow
money,
the,
what is
who
going to
wrote
be
the last one.
fundamentally different? The British lawyers wrote it. It was called the
What what I
ECHR,
what I what I think
and it's been
it
a
seeks to
brilliant document
achieve
that has stood the
has
test of
it.
time in a post-war
We
period since
we
1945.
can't even deport murdering criminals from this country
Of
because
course
you
we
have to
can.
go through
Of
because
course
you
we
have to,
can.
but some do not get removed. They go through
Right?
judicial
How
appeal.
many? How many?
Well,
How many
I can't
murderers,
give you that.
rapists
At
have not been deported back
at
to
this
their
point,
countries? How many?
well, I can't give you the exact number, but neither can you.
But my point is,
So you're asking,
if
yeah, but you're asking me the question as though you're trying to give me a
I'm not
gotcha.
trying to
It's
get
not a
rid of the
gotcha. It's like
ECHR. I'm not trying to get rid of it. I'm
I
not
did.
trying to change that system.
I'm saying to you that you can reform the system where you don't have the right of appeal if you are a murdering scumbag from a foreign land. You should be deported without question. There should be no legal appeal for that. None. If you're going to come here as a foreigner, as an immigrant, claim asylum, get whatever benefits that Britain offers you. I'm not talking about financial benefit or housing benefit. I'm talking about the benefit of being in a country like ours, right? And you take that. for granted, and
I'm
you want to
playing
go
devil's
around
advocate.
killing and raping people,
I'm,
fuck off, go.
I'm playing
And I say
devil's
the same
advocate.
thing about naturally born British people. If you're going to do the same thing, jail for life. I don't care
My my
where you come from or what your background is. If you're a murdering scumbag, go.
my point, right, is that I'm playing devil's advocate with you. My point is, I don't see, and this is where the right, I think, are going to struggle. I don't see that this is the kind of like this is not happening on such a frequency that we've got to then, as a nation and as a country, expend hundreds of millions of pounds, huge amounts of political capital, huge amounts of international credibility. We've got to spend all of our time just doing this
We
because
don't
there
have
might
any
be two
now.
or three people every decade that might fall through the cracks, that, you know, a murdering rapist as you say.
Two or three people. We've had two or three murders this year from foreigners that have come over. What are you
Okay.
talking
Okay.
about?
So has their deportations been refused?
The
Because the guy
cracks.
in the
My God,
Epping Forest Hotel who raped that young girl who was then sent to prison in Chelmsford, he was deported back to Ethiopia. So there
good.
was no, yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying to you is it works, the current system, but the right are going to expend all this time, effort, and money on something for just a small, tiny little element of where the system is currently failing. And my
I
argument to
think
you is
it's
I don't think that's an election winning strategy. I honestly don't think for
okay. Fair enough.
the
You
public.
don't think it will, but I'm not saying that it's a open and shut scenario for me. I'm just saying that, I understand the premise as to why they want to leave it, and understand that they just want to be able to say, look, we're in control. We're not being told what to do by people in Europe. We want to dictate that. Will it come off? Unlikely, because you've got too many lefty lawyers that will block any
Lefty
in
line.
you do. Come on, let's just keep it real. You do. You do.
Oh,
You do. Most human rights lawyers are all lefties anyway, so they'll
are
be
they?
arguing until they're blue in the face. Yeah, you know they are. Your mate was Keir Starmer's a human rights lawyer. He's a lefty. Come on, let's have it right, Prime Minister. So, you know, they're going to argue that against that until they're blue in the face. And
It's not
on
going to
that
win it.
note,
It's not going to win an election.
oh well, it may not, but there's plenty of things for the right to sink their teeth into if they start thinking properly. It can't just be about immigration. I'll give you that. It cannot just be focused on immigration alone. You have to factor in the
And
fact that
austerity.
people are. Well, that's not been confirmed yet, but
But that's all
by
the
any manifesto pledge.
that's all the noise. Again, you've read it there. Living within
Yeah,
our
sure.
means, deep cuts to welfare is
That
what it said.
okay. Okay. So you and I do our bit to earn a bit of money, right? If you don't earn the money, can you take your family away on holiday? No. Can you pay your bills? No. Can you put food in the fridge and the cupboards in your kitchen? No. That's living within your means. If you can't afford it, you can't have it. I don't see why the country should be run in any different way. If the country can't afford it, we shouldn't have it. And
But
if we
that's not
can't
the
afford it, why can't we afford it? What can we do to strip back?
uh,
Where's the waste? What can we do
honestly.
to reduce the bill?
Honestly, well, get rid of political assistance in Basildon. There's one. But on this issue, honestly, it's like maxing out the credit card. Like that is just not how government finance works. Like it, honestly, it's so
What's
annoying
QE?
when
What is
quantitative easing,
quantitative
printing
easing?
money, printing money.
Right,
Right there
there you
you go.
go. So what's that?
Right?
That's a credit card right there.
My argument, Charlie, on this, the we are living as a generation where we are likely to be the first generation in post-war history where we do not do as well as our parents' generation. Right? We've
Mm,
had this conversation, bring it all the way back, because if there apparently is 18 people who are still with us 2.5 hours later when they've got to go
get
to
in.
work tomorrow morning, right? But my point is that with housing as an example, where people are really struggling to get on the housing market. They're really struggling to save up money, all the rest of it. It wasn't like that for our parents' generation. My mum and dad worked in banks all of their life, right? My granddad ran pubs. So when it came to like getting a mortgage, it was more like I'll buy you a drink than it was let's go through credit scores and all the rest of it in the 70s and 80s when people were doing all that. It's a harder system now for a lot of people. And as I said to you earlier on in the conversation, I don't believe if it's a case of should we borrow money as a nation in order to give to councils to clean up your estate, to put the streetlights back on, to collect your bins every week, to open the leisure centre down there, right? Honestly, and I'm being hypothetical when I'm saying this, honestly, right now, I genuinely believe that Joe Public would say, borrow the money and spend it. Because we are sick to death of having
I
the
don't think they
last
would.
15 years of just being told we've got to live within our means, we've got to tighten our
But
belts, because the net
it
result of
goes.
that has been I'm living in a shithole.
Yeah, but that's the point. They're being charged more money to live in a shithole, right? And the more you borrow, the more you have to pay back. So what you're doing is increasing the tax bill long term for our children.
But what I'm
They're
saying
gonna
to
have to
you,
they're gonna have to pay unless someone wants to come in and print some more money, of course. Then that's
I
problem solved.
don't believe that going into an election promising more austerity 20 years on
Yeah,
from
but
the financial crisis.
you're intimating that that's what it's going to be.
Chris Philp,
You're basically
Chris Philp, the shadow Home Secretary for the Tories, was all over the press. I was watching him do all the rounds the other day, going on about Andy Burnham, how terrible Andy Burnham is because Andy Burnham hasn't said how he's going to pay for it, and where the country's got to live within his means, the rest of it. And I sat there and thought, do you know what, mate? You are so far off the mark
but I
of
don't
where the
get
country is.
what you disagree with in principle. Living within your means. I can't print money if I can't
I'm not
afford to go
saying
down a pub
I'm not
with you
saying
on
I
a Saturday
disagree with
night.
that.
I can't just turn up and get a free
But
pint.
Charlie, I'm not saying I'm talking about the political strategy. I'm talking
I
about
know.
how did the right
I'm trying to make it
how,
relatable.
yeah, but how did the right get themselves into a position where their messaging is going to hit a chord with the public beyond we're going to stop the votes? Because everybody understands that that's what the right want to do. Everybody gets that. And actually, ironically, it's the left that are actually stopping the votes, not the right. But there we go. Right? We understand that that's where you are. But on the economy, on economics, you've got Andy Burnham very clearly turning around and saying that the last 40 years of neoliberal economics has not worked. That all of the public utilities that we've given away, that we are now getting charged out the arse for, on water and electricity and all the rest of it. How there's a hose pipe ban right in this part of the world tomorrow. What a load of rubbish that is. All these water
Mm.
companies taking tens of millions of pounds out every year in profit, and we're all having to be banned or fined £1,000, right? Andy Burnham is clear. He doesn't agree with that. He's for nationalising those services and bringing it back into public ownership. Whether you agree with that or you don't agree with that, you know that's where he is on it. What that then does is it tells Joe Public that geezer cares about my bills. He wants to try and reduce my bills every month. He wants to make sure that I've got more money in my pocket for a pint on a Saturday with my mates down the local pub, for the holiday with the kids and in the summer holidays. That's what you get. I don't see from what Rupert Lowe is saying, from what Farage is saying, and what Kemi Badenoch is saying, I don't see what is different in their approach to the economy that we haven't heard from George Osborne or Philip Hammond or Sajid Javid or Rishi Sunak over the last 15 years. And that's why I say I don't think the right has got their act together on that, and I can't see how they win.
Do you know what? I'll concede that point there about um, Andy Burnham making a good case for the economy and how the right seem to be repeating the same old lines. I agree. Now, some of the things that Andy Burnham has said since he's become Prime Minister, I said this at the beginning or near the beginning of the show, that I quite like him, which is going to get me shot by all my mates. But like, I do quite like him. There's something quite interesting about him. He comes across as quite an affable guy. I mean, I've never met him. I know you have. Um, I I'm not against um political parties for any particular reason other than their policies. But I like what I'm hearing from what Andy Burnham is saying. The proof will be in the pudding. Let's see if he can get some of these things moving forward. If he doesn't, there's always, the radicals and the racists on the right to take over. Who
And
knows?
if he does, Charlie boy, you can come home to Labour.
I think I'd prefer to be homeless at the moment.
On that
I don't
note,
mind that. On that note, yeah, as we finish talking about how important housing is, I'm making jokes about going homeless. I do think though, if for those of you still with us at this hour, it's near quarter to 12 now. Thanks a lot, by the way, for carrying on with us for the last 3 hours. We appreciate it. Um, get in touch with your local councillors. Tell them about your concerns about housing. I don't think that this should just be an episode of Common Ground where it's me and Gavin talking about it. I think if you've got an issue you want to raise, get in touch. That's what they're there for. And raise your concerns to them. Make sure you hold them accountable and get on it, because this is without doubt one of the most important issues in our country, and I stand by it. Build social housing, build council houses, save people from falling through the net, get people with that foundation so that the only way is up. What you do with that foundation is up to you. But if you've got it, you can only go that way. If you don't have it, who knows where you'll end up. So, yeah, do get in touch with your councillors, and better yet, nudge your MPs as well. They're there to do something. I know half of them do fuck all, but they're there to do something. So why don't you get on them and make them do something as well? Gavin, pleasure. I've enjoyed this one. This one went a little bit all over the place, but it's pretty good. I enjoyed the debate
I,
there
th-
at
I
the
thought
end.
I thought it was a very credible conversation, Charlie.
I thought it was incredible, actually.
Very good.
There
Till
we go.
next
Good
week.
night. Indeed.